back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler, here with Johnny. Why are all of my phones going off? Johnny, you're sending me pictures in the middle of us recording. What's going on?
I technically sent that to you before you hit record. It's just now reaching your phone.
Everything?
Because you have shitty cell phone service.
Everything is now on vibrate. And we were just talking about how my mom made me swim laps for D&D books. And then we're like, why are we not recording this? This is like experiences in our lives that we should be talking about on the show, Johnny. You got a mug, right?
No, not mugs, cups.
Cups, mugs, a pint glass. It looks like a big coffee mug that has one of those resealable tops on it. Who calls something a cup if it has like a cover that goes over it?
I think anyone.
All right. Johnny has an adult sippy cup, and it's a Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master Guide, which is so funny because, like, I could see, like, a Dungeon Master cup, but having specifically the book Dungeon Master Guide is such a strange theme to put on a cup.
So, for people who aren't going to understand Tyler's word picture, this is a 30-ounce steel tumbler. It's just a big cup. You know, like one of these insulated cups that you can carry around. It has a top because it's insulated, so if you want to keep your hot stuff hot, your cold stuff cold. Typically, I don't walk around with a lid on it unless I'm going to be traveling or it's like my tea and I want it to stay hot, you know, all day at work.
But yeah, I don't recognize the art, and you said it might be 5th edition, because the one that I would really recognize is 3rd edition, because that's when I was really playing D&D a lot.
That's when I played a lot too. But what I'm fascinated by is that your mom offered to buy you books if you would swim laps.
Yeah, it's just swim laps. I don't remember the details of it, but I swam a certain amount of laps to get each book. And I got the Player's Handbook, I got the Dungeon Master Guide, I got the Monster Manual. I remember specifically getting the Psionics Handbook. And, like, the Psionics Handbook is when I really realized, like, I use, like, a little bit of Monster Manual stuff if I was, like, really desperate to just quickly look up something that I couldn't get from the internet. I got the Psionics Handbook, and there was never a Psionic NPC. None of my PCs were ever Psionic. It's like, I just had this book. It's like, wow, I know all this stuff about Psionic characters now. Time to never use it because I'm not a creative enough, 13-year-old. I very quickly learned that I should not be buying D&D supplements because, like, there's already more than enough in the Player's Handbook for me to use as a relatively casual player. Same,
but the completionist in you had you going. I just think it's delightful that your mom had you do like a bookathon to get books. Did you ever have to do like a bookathon at school? Like, I'll read this many pages, or I'll walk this much if you donate to the local library or anything. Did you ever have...
Man, you're talking about like 25 years ago I did something like that. Yeah, I definitely got people to sponsor me to read pages and stuff like that.
Yeah. I did, like, when I was a kid, I volunteered for the March of Dimes in high school and stuff, so we had all kinds of dumb stuff like that. That's a fun fact that nobody knew. Once upon a time, I volunteered for the March of Dimes. That was a thing I did for over a year of my life. Hey, high school, you were a weird time.
Good job, Johnny. When I volunteered for the local, like, village restoration next to my house, and I worked in the library. They just had like a bunch of books, like 100-year-old books, and they have no idea what they had, and they told me to organize it and put it in an Excel database. And it was the perfect job for me, except that it was a volunteer job, and I didn't actually want to do it, and I just had to do it for some kind of credit for something. So, but if someone wants to pay me to organize old books, like, fuck yeah. Like, I want to be a librarian.
It sounds, yeah. There was a time after I graduated, and I was considering being a speech therapist or a librarian. And I was looking very, very closely at the library studies master's program. And I was like, is this something I want to do? And then I wound up getting a job where I was too busy to go to school more than I had. And it didn't happen. And then I got invited because I knew someone in the program for speech therapy and to come audit and see if I wanted to do it. And I audited one course and I was like, I'm okay, I think. And I passed on that. These are fun facts. Is this like details I don't think have been revealed? Whew. I mean, we've been doing this podcast a while now. We got to dig deep to get stuff people haven't heard.
Yeah. We're just learning about our childhoods now.
Yeah.
If any librarians want to listen into the show, want to reach out to me and tell me like how cool being a librarian is, and like, are there librarian jobs? Because thinking about like, I live in the middle of kind of 3 towns, and there are 2 libraries, and like, how many people could possibly work between those 2 libraries? Like, if I want to become a librarian, first of all, I probably need like a separate degree or something, but...
You do. You need a master's in library science. But all schools have libraries, so that's where you go to become a librarian.
Okay. That makes sense. But like, that would be like I want to like move to like a small town in the middle of the woods, because that's the ideal, because let me get out of society eventually. But there's not going to be a library there, so...
Well, the other thing that it lends to, and what I really wanted to do with it, like I would have been fine being a librarian, but like you can become an archivist for places if you have a master's in library science. That's something they look for. So I was looking into that, like some museums and stuff, and some film studios where they have vaults, and they, like the Disney vaults and whatever, where they want someone who knows how to organize and store things. That is part of what you can do.
That sounds really good.
It does sound really good.
Can I get like a library science degree on top of a computer science undergraduate degree and just be like, I know none of this matters, but I want to organize books.
You totally could, because it doesn't matter. Like you can just go get a master's in library science, and they're not gonna be like, oh well, you're undergraduate, you don't have enough. You probably already have the prereqs, or maybe you have to knock out 1 or 2. Like nothing consequential. Also, a master's degree isn't that many credits, so it's not that hard.
I wonder if my job would pay for it. I'll just be like, hey, I'm getting a master's. They'd be like, great, we have some program to pay for that, because corporations sometimes do, right? And just don't tell them it's library science.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just continuing education, and whatever betters you at your job is what you'll do. Meanwhile, like instead of like doing that stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, let me take more courses on writing SQL code. This is like 10 minutes into the podcast. What the fuck are we doing?
I don't know.
We're just having a casual conversation.
Well, that's why we started recording, right? We're like, talking about some anecdotes. Someone in the Discord said they want more anecdotes.
Yeah, we could just have this in After Dark, or we could just do it here. Hey guys, that was a sample of what After Dark is like. Actually, the After Darks have been pretty focused lately.
Johnny, speaking of the previous After Dark, and no one will remember any of the games that you're buying, no one's going to remember any of these games. And we kind of started an After Dark about this, and then halfway through it, you're like, no, this topic's good. This should be an episode. So we're just going to make it an episode. Johnny, no one's going to remember any games, because think about... Not from when you were born. Like, from when you were born until now doesn't count, because you lived through that. But before you were born, how much music, movies, books, any kind of media do you really know or remember?
Not many.
And, like, it's some. There's millennia of history, I guess. But, like, we really only know things from maybe 100 years past when we were born. And, like, we'll know, like, the highlights. We'll know The Great Gatsby. We'll know The Grapes of Wrath. We'll know the book with the kids on the island that I can't think of the name of.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies, yes.
There we go.
But we don't know, like, if we were living through 1961, there were probably, like, 10 best-selling books that everyone was talking about. And people were like, man, this book is super good. People are going to remember this. And literary nerds might know that stuff. But we don't. And we never will, and it will never have any impact on our lives, and we don't think about it at all.
Let me give you an example, since you're talking about books. Stephen King is one of the most prolific authors of our time. We agree on this, yeah?
Sure. What has he wrote, 84 books?
Yeah, so a lot of books, and almost all of them are bestsellers. How many of those? And he's going to have more books than most people remembered, but it's not going to be many.
Yeah, that's crazy, and that's one author. And, like, books are the craziest thing, because there are so many books, it's impossible. Even compared to, like, music and movies. Because anyone can just write a book and no one can read it, there's just an infinite amount of books.
Yeah, and games require a lot more, especially as we move through time. The ability to make a game is, by yourself, is practically impossible now.
Well, I disagree, because, I mean, you look at, like, mobile games and stuff like that, and, you know, you got hundreds of new games every day on the App Store, and a lot of those are indie games made by, like, one guy.
Sure, no one's remembering those ever. We don't even know all those. So like that's the other thing. You need a big thrust. You need a marketing push. You need people to know what's going on. You have to have something that is pushing you into the public eye. And most of these mobile games aren't. Most of them are just like clicky nothings.
If you're an indie developer, like, man, I hope you find your weird niche audience. Like we found here at Collector's Quest, like we got like a few thousand people that listen to us. Like we're never going to be huge, but we're happy with what we got. But I mean,
it's amazing that anyone listens to it.
But you got Undertale and Minecraft. I mean, there's going to be more, but that's 1 and 2 out of like 100,000 indie games that have come out in the same period.
They're real out. Like they feel like prevalent because you're like, oh, I can cite an example. But when you compare it to the sheer mass that is actually out there, it's just like nothing.
Yeah. So Johnny, this is different than the episode about the most historically important games because going through the past of any kind of media, we could do movies, we could do video games. If you look at what people actually remember, like the average person actually remembers in terms of old media, it's often not the most important thing. It's like there's something that's just like the best remembered thing. And there's overlap in that, like just spoilers. Super Mario Brothers is going to be both the most important and most remembered game of 1985. But there's plenty of like stupid Tyler shit like, think of like Karate Champ, Yi Kung Fu, Karateka, like the early history of the fighting genre. All those games are really important. No one gives a fuck about any of that. Even now, no one gives a shit about that because Street Fighter 2 might as well be where the entire fighting game genre started.
Might as well be. And that's, so I think this episode becomes a nice bookend to the, what are the most influential, important games versus what games are going to stand the test of time and will be remembered past our lifetime.
Yes. And we can already see that ourselves because, I don't know if you can, Johnny. When were you born?
I was born in 1978, Tyler.
Oh, perfect. We've got like a few years of video game history, like major commercial video game history that we could try to remember before you were born to see if any of that mattered.
See if any of that stuck on me.
Yeah. But this is... I haven't started thinking about this a lot until we started recently talking about it with each other. Because, like, just in my mind, I think of, like, a console like the PS2. Like, it's always going to be the greatest console of all time in my head. Because that's just how I think. And then the more I think about what actually gets remembered over the course of decades, it's like everything on PS2 is going to fall off because its real strength is its variety and the cool, like, something like Rez, like something in a niche genre that like really makes the PS2 interesting and exciting. No one is going to remember Rez in 40 years. That's just going to be like another game. Like in the entire library of the PS2, the average person, like 40 years from now, when this is like ancient history, the average person might know like 3 PS2 games, period.
Yeah, maybe. And, we'll get into it, but you may be thinking, that's crazy. People are going to know more about that. But we will give you examples in other forms of media where we can look back to the past and show you how that is in fact true.
I think we have a lot of people in like their 30s, 40s, 50s listening to us. I mean, you don't have to assume, like, go find a kid and ask them what a Sega Master System is. That's not a game. That's a whole ass console. They're not going to know what a Sega Master System is.
Or they're going to think it's the Genesis.
I bet there are plenty of kids who have no idea what a Sega Genesis is.
I'm sure. As my friends have kids who are getting older now, and some but some of them, like, not older, they're not like adults. Some are, but I have some friends who have like 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds now, and they're like, oh, that's one of those things? No, I thought it was something else. I was trying to show my friend's daughter, just what the N64 was because she wanted to see an early Nintendo. And she knows about the NES because her dad still has one of those laying around. But she was like, oh, an N64? And she also did not understand why it was called the 64 at all. Why? Is it the 64th one? I was like, no. Because no one gives a shit about, like... Oh,
bits, dude!
64 bits, kid. You never heard of bits? Oh my god, what a bad convention that is not standing the test of time.
Yes.
You never thought about what a stupid convention that was, did you? Like, it makes the Nintendo naming convention especially egregious.
To be fair, like TurboGrafx 16 kind of started it, right? It's not entirely Nintendo's fault, although it is perhaps one of the times that they followed a trend rather than started a trend of their own. Because we had TurboGrafx 16, 32X, and then Nintendo.
And you were giving TurboGrafx more credit than it's ever gotten in its whole life.
I mean, it did it though, right? And it's not even like a 16-bit CPU. It's like an 8-bit CPU with a 16-bit GPU or like a bus or something. It's like a lie.
I mean, Genesis really came out with the, 16 bits. And then Nintendo was like, so's ours. Like, look, ours is, yeah? You want to see how many bits we got 64 now. Is that good?
Yeah, they skipped 32. It's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, but the 32X was there.
Johnny, let's prove our point in how forgotten media is, because I think way more games are going to be forgotten than most people think about. And I don't think this is going to apply to literally anyone who listens to this show, because if you're listening to Collector's Quest, like you're not even like on like the most popular stuff like Pat the NES Punk, Metal Jesus, even the people who like listen, like there's millions of people who watch like the most popular retro game stuff. Even those this isn't going to apply to because they're enthusiasts. But when you think of just like your friends who were like, oh yeah, I remember Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot, like those were rad. The people who are just into video games who aren't hyper-focused on old video games and how cool video game history is, they're the type of people who are just like not going to ever grow up knowing stuff before they were born. And I think a good example is movies, because I consider myself a movie fan, but I'm not like seriously interested in film history or anything. Like I don't study film. I don't go out of my way to watch a bunch of movies from the 40s and 50s. I will go watch older movies, but it's not like my specialty, I will say.
Yeah. You don't know actors. You don't know what they've done.
I don't even know what an actor is. No. I think everything in movies is actually real.
Just to throw this out there, I want to get your opinion before we go. Do you think the franchise nature of movies or of games, I mean movies now too, but do you think the franchise nature of games will extend the historical knowledge of games greater than movies did? Because when we cite these, like movies are figuring out, like let's make the Marvel universe, let's make this whole big thing. Like everything is a big franchise now. In the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that really wasn't the thing. So do you think that franchising now is going to carry historical remembrance further?
Not at all. I mean, maybe further, sure, but I don't think it's going to eliminate the problem of there being so much media and people will only be able to contain so much of it in their brains. So like the past 10, 20 years, people are going to have a good idea of what all that shit is, but past 100 years, I think a lot of it just falls off, even when there's a franchise. So you brought up the MCU. How many MCU movies are there? I literally have no idea. 40?
Oh, God.
60?
So many.
Okay.
No, I mean, there's probably like, 25?
Oh, really? 30? There's that few? All right, but how many people, like, do people, right now people go back and they watch every MCU movie, I'm sure. But if there's 40 of those movies, are people going to watch every MCU movie? Or is there going to be, like, the condensed list of, like, yeah, but here's, like, the 16 movies that you really need to watch, because you don't need the second Ant-Man and Wasp movie.
Yeah, you don't need Shang-Chi or whatever.
Exactly. Like, there's already things that are going to fall off because there's too much, and those are just 2-hour movies. Like, you could put the entire MCU together, and it's probably not as long as Skyrim.
So I Googled it. It says 31 movies, but I don't know if that's including the Spider-Man movies, because that's kind of off. And then that probably doesn't include the original Blade movies and stuff like that. So there's going to be outliers.
Yeah. But even think of Zelda. How many Zelda games are there? There's already more Zelda games than most people will ever play. Most people don't play every Zelda. People might play like
that's weird.
The Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, maybe like one from every generation or every other generation. But like, how many people are going back and they're playing like both Oracle games and Minish Cap and Link to the Past? Like, a lot of these games are pretty similar.
And Link's Crossbow.
Yeah. Like Twilight Princess, 10 out of 10. It's perfect. It's just Ocarina of Time again. Twilight Princess will not be remembered in like the same vein as maybe an Ocarina of Time or the original Legend of Zelda. It's just too similar that it's going to fall off.
I think it's better than
Ocarina of Time?
No.
I mean, you can't do that to me, so I don't know. Because I played that game when I was like 9 years old, Johnny. It's impossible. It might be better. You know what? There's something with the colors though. It's got like muted colors.
Yeah.
It's just
And it
Skyward Sword though. Skyward Sword looks nice.
it's the worst one.
The game sucks, but man, that game looks nice.
Yeah, yes. I'll give you that.
We're talking about movies. I want to go through let's go through 2 movies from every decade. We're going to jump around by every 5 years here.
Well, do your you wrote up a nice little thing here. Like do your opening paragraph.
Oh, my opening paragraph, Johnny, media and pop culture are inherently transient, meaning as time marches on, we forget about the past. And we remember well the eras we lived through. We can name a lot of popular 80s and 90s songs, even ones that won't be remembered. I could name probably 6 Limp Bizkit songs, and I was not a huge Limp Bizkit fan.
Ugh.
But no one in 40 years is even going to know Limp Bizkit existed, Johnny. But I lived through it, so I remember it.
God, history's getting one thing right.
Yeah, but I mean, like this stuff at the top is what we already talked about. The time before the real... No, if something really stands the test of time, it will be remembered, even though the people remembering it didn't live through it. And I mean, I'll just reiterate that 100 times this episode because, like, PlayStation 2, and literally everyone listening to this podcast will remember all the intricacies of what makes PlayStation 2 fucking incredible.
Will they?
Absolutely.
I'm not.
Well, except for you, apparently. You think it's overrated. Spoilers, SNES is the most overrated console. That's not a spoiler.
No way. The Nintendo, the NES is the most overrated console of all time.
I think NES, SNES, and PlayStation 2 have good claims for being both the best console ever made and the most overrated console ever made. I don't think those aren't mutually exclusive.
No, I don't think so.
I think the PlayStation 1 is perhaps one of the ones that has a claim to be the best console ever made, but it isn't the most overrated. I don't hear as many people extolling PS1.
No, we did our ranking thing. We got to go back and rank more consoles.
All right. Did we come up with PS1? We probably came up with NES on top because we were talking about collecting. It's got cardboard boxes.
Yeah, it was collector. It was collector focused.
All right, Johnny. Let me throw some movies at you. Skippy from 1931. I did 1931. There was no Academy Awards in 1930.
Do you want me to tell you if I know these or what? Like, what do you just want to read?
All right. I want to know if you've heard of them, if you could describe the premise of them, and if you've actually seen them. Let me go through all of them first, and then you could tell me at the end. So, Skippy, 1931. The Informer, 1935. Skip in the 40s. We're going to come back to it. Sunset Boulevard, 1950. The Rose Tattoo, 1955. Elmer Gantry, 1960. Dr. Zhivago, 1965. MASH, 1970. Nashville, 1975. And Raging Bull, 1980.
Okay. So, disclaimer. I've had a couple of film courses.
Oh, you piece of shit. Okay.
I know. Okay. So I just want to put that out there. So I think I'm an outlier, but I still don't know most of these, right? So I don't know Skippy at all. I think I know what the poster looks like for that. And is it like something about like a guy goes back to his like poor town or something? I can't remember. The Informer, I've heard of. Sunset Boulevard, I've seen. I know about the Rose Tattoo, but I have not seen it. I've never heard of Elmer Gantry. I've seen Dr. Zhivago. I've seen MASH. I have not seen Nashville, but I have seen Raging Bull.
All right. So out of what is this? This is like 9 movies. I have seen actually none of these. And the only ones I'm familiar with are Sunset Boulevard, Dr. Zhivago, and Raging Bull, and kind of Nashville.
I mean, I would feel like those are the 3 most popular.
Like MASH, I didn't even know was a movie. I thought that was just a TV show. Because I think of MASH as like such a grandpa thing. It's only like 60 years old, and in my entire life, I've always felt this MASH is the grandpa thing.
And people say it's the greatest TV series ever. And then, like, I don't know what's going on in my timeline, but people keep coming back to like, yeah, like MASH was like my dad's show. And then like, I went back and watched it and MASH is great. And I'm just like, what is happening? It was just always like the old person show when I was young, and I just was not interested. I don't care about Hot Lips Houlihan and guy who dressed like a woman was Klinger? Is that it? I don't remember. to try and get out of the. He was like trying to be kicked out of the military for being crazy. Yeah. Anyways, I don't remember.
33 years old, Johnny. I do not care.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
These movies, these are the runner-ups for. These are like the best guess of what would be the runner-up for Best Picture. So more or less, these are the second best movies that came out every year. I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna say maybe the best movie of every year would be Remembered. Even that, I don't think is entirely correct.
Well, and I don't think best movie of the year always
we're
is always
It's an example. I know that the Academy is like does not go in line with the public and all that shit. We're just trying to give a general example here.
I'm just saying.
I'd say roughly half of these, like, we don't know that much about. And I would say more than half, like pretty much more than half of these. And I haven't seen any of them. And these are like really highly regarded popular movies from like movie people. So if I can't even, let's forget you and your film courses. If I can't recount having seen a single one of these, I can't tell you the plot of a single one of these. Like Raging Bull is a movie about boxing. Like, do I get a plot point for saying that? Like Nashville is a movie about fucking singing. Do I get a point for that? I don't think so. I'm going to say at most over the course of time for the average person, one game a year gets remembered. And maybe there's like a special case, like some baller year, like 2007 and 1998. Like those are some killer years for video games. Maybe like 2 or 3. But like looking back over the course of history, like even the best stuff, the most highly regarded, and this is like the second best stuff, but like the most highly regarded stuff, really getting lost. So, Johnny, I said I wanted to skip the 40s because in 40 years, the 80s, the 1980s, will be 90 years old, which is kind of stretching. Like, hopefully we'll live to be 90, right? So I wanted to, let's look at, in 40 years, what movies from the 1940s will be remembered. So the best pictures from the 1940s are Grapes of Wrath, Sergeant York, Yankee Doodle Dandy, The Song of Bernadette, Double Indemnity, Mildred Pierce, It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, Johnny Belinda, and A Letter to Three Wives.
It's so weird because like I feel like there's like 10 movies from the 30s that like are so much more popular than any of these and still remembered. Anyways.
I need to do this again with someone who is not as much of a movie person. Johnny, you're ruining my point.
This is not me. This is not
No one remembers movies from the 30s. What are you talking about?
Snow White and the Seven Dwarves.
Oh my God. That wouldn't have won Best Picture. It would have won like Best Animated Picture.
King Kong.
Okay. All right. I know. But again, you're talking about like from an entire
Gone
decade.
with the Wind.
Yes, from an entire decade. Yes, there are probably 10
Citizen
movies.
Kane.
That's not from the 30s. That's from the 40s.
No, it's from 1941. But Casablanca, like this is what I'm saying. Like 1941, you got Sergeant York, but fucking Citizen Kane came out.
All right, Johnny, we have to have some kind of objective metric, and this is just meant to be the intro to the show, so we're going with Oscars, okay?
Okay. But also Citizen Kane. Go on.
All right. I'm just saying, out of those 10 movies from that entire decade, like 2 of them I would say are like absolute bona fide classics that the average person might have seen. It's a Wonderful Life and Miracle on 34th Street.
It's still present today, still watched, still... And I feel like slipping. I feel like those are falling off the ladder.
Yeah, probably a little bit because like there's more classic Christmas movies and I don't know, people.
And well, I think the people who really cherish those movies are aging out and dying.
Yeah, you're right.
Sorry. Yeah, I think after those 2, I think it's Double Indemnity and then distant fourth is Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah, I was going to pick those 2 as well. I think those are like a little bit more movie people are into that kind of stuff. And also Grapes of Wrath kind of has the caveat of I think people remember the book better than the movie, but that's a subjective judgment.
No, I think that's true.
This entire decade, the best stuff of the decade, even the top 10 things, we've got like 2 absolute bona fide classics. And yes, we're missing like Citizen Kane in here.
And Treasure of Sierra Madre and Casablanca.
So we're going to be going through year by year, Johnny, and picking one game from each year. But I want to remember the 1940s because there's going to be years when we're like, But like, how could I choose between all these great games? And like, not even one game from each year is going to ultimately be remembered. Like century-old games. I mean, the technology, the pop culture, everything about being a human being will have moved on so long that whatever the fuck a PlayStation 3 was just will not matter. So, I mean, we shouldn't even be picking one game per year, but I think it will make it very clear how much is going to be forgotten. And then at the end, I want to kind of like tally up like how reasonable it would be to collect even like the best game from each year, or like the most remembered game from each year.
So, and like, just to put this into further perspective too. So yeah, like I know about some of these movies and I can pull them off a list and like, look, that like maybe aren't here and you're going to remember some games, but these are still movies and stuff that my parents were talking to me about, or people I knew, or film studies or movie people were talking to me about. So I know them, like say Psycho from 1960. But right now, like 100%, any kid who's not in a film class has never heard of Psycho. I'm not talking to those kids about those. Like we get passed down these artifacts that are like drifting off. And that's why I like talking about things like The Sound of Music or A Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street. The people who are very invested in those movies are moving on. And I'm not as invested as people in my family were about those movies. So I'm not likely to pass those on. What I'm going to pass on to my kids is going to be Home Alone, right? Or my kid's child, right? So that's what's going to stick. So things are constantly going to be slipping off, and like that's going to be my lifetime. And then so if I think about my son's lifetime, where is he ever going to pick up knowledge about this? So I want you to think, like, if you're old enough to have kids, I want you to not think about what you know, but what your kids know, because that's really where it's going to go. And then as time marches on, all these things that we think are super popular are going to slip even further.
All right, Johnny, I think we've belabored the point enough.
No, let's keep doing it. Let's really fucking hammer this one.
I went into Golden Age comics to like, I just want to like really make sure like this isn't some kind of unique thing in media, because like it feels like it would be right that things get forgotten off. Like I can see it in movies, obviously in music. Like who the fuck would listen to a song from the 1940s? You know, like people still listen to like the Beatles and some stuff from the 60s, but like it really falls off the further back you go. Not anymore. No one's on their phone listening to like big band music. But I went to Golden Age comics. And I just went to the most valuable ones, because I didn't even want to like think of like subjectively what are the best remembered ones. What are people paying the most for? And even in like the absolute, like the most packed years of like the late 30s and the early 40s, where it's like, you know, you got your Action Comics, you got your Detective Comics, you got your Superman, you got your Flash, all that stuff, like maybe 2 or 3 like actual mega super remembered keys in like the absolute most packed years of those. And then like you get down to it and it's like first appearance of Sandman, origin story of Wonder Woman, and it's like, yeah, people are going to remember this stuff, but like it's so clearly not the absolute big stuff that the average person is going to think about. No one's going to think about whatever Adventure Comics is the first appearance of Sandman, unless you're really into Golden Age comic history.
No, they're probably going to think about, I mean, if you say Sandman now, people are going to think about the Netflix show.
Yes.
It's not even the right Sandman. So
people, if you like Batman, read Golden Age Sandman. They're kind of all the same. Read like the first trade paperback. I think Sandman's kind of funny. He's basically Batman. Like he breaks into places and like gasses people. He like basically commits a bunch of crimes as a vigilante, and the narrator in the book is always like, and he's never committed a crime, because if you're attacking bad guys, it doesn't count as a crime, I guess. Johnny, I'm ready to do it. From the 1970s up to 2000, and this might make the episode too long or not long enough. Who knows? And also, I'm doing just to make things consistent, I use the Japanese release date for any Japanese games. It doesn't really matter. It's a thought experiment. Johnny, 1971, Computer Space is going to be remembered.
No. Nope.
You just think that's going to fall off? Yeah, you're probably right.
I don't even know what it is. I don't know what that is. And we've talked about it on the show, and I still don't know.
Okay, all right, 1971. We're starting off like nothing remembered. Like, all right, if we go like all the way back, Space War, I'm going to say probably will be remembered. At least because it will be one of the things people point to as the first ever video game.
I'm going to tell you no. Like,
no?
Even if I know it, no, I'm going to, even stuff I know about doesn't necessarily, like, objectively, I'm going to tell you whether I think it will be remembered. And a lot of stuff, like, you got to remember, like, we're going to know a lot of this stuff because we're, like, deep collectors and we do episodes about this kind of stuff, so we know it. But, like, whether it's going to be remembered, we are, like, weird outliers. So we have to step outside of ourselves, and I'm going to think like my friend who played a lot of games and, like, played all the games of his era. But I'm going to react like him if I said these games to him.
All right, fuck computer space, fine. 1972, Magnavox Odyssey is really the only thing that's going to make it here. If you don't think computer space is going to make it, I'm guessing you don't think Magnavox Odyssey will make it. So I kind of get that.
No.
1973, also, I put Hunt the Wumpus. Guess what, guys? That one's not going to make it.
No one.
1973, Pong, Johnny. By far the first game that will absolutely make it, meaning, and I didn't really have anything, Empire, that's an old strategy game, and Lemonade Stand is an old business simulation game. Those are already forgotten. No one cares about those. 1974, we've got, I tried to find, like, the most memorable, influential games for every year. D&D, Space Sim, Grand Track 10, I think might be the first racing game.
I forgot when you're drunk.
And then Wild Gunman, the original Wild Gunman in Japanese arcades, which used like a projector and a light gun.
No.
Sorry, 1974, you are not going to be remembered. D&D is, it has like a claim to being one of the earliest, most important CRPGs. Still not going to make it though. 1975, Johnny. We've got Home Pong, which is just Pong released at the home, Colossal Cave Adventure, and Petit 5. And I wouldn't have even put Petit 5 on here, but is one of those games that consistently comes up when you look into the history of RPGs. Now, let's be real. Johnny, you don't think Colossal Cave Adventure is going to be remembered?
No.
I mean, you did say Computer Space isn't going to be remembered.
No. These aren't being remembered.
Yeah, you're right. All right, so again, like... I feel like we're being pretty liberal with our cuts here, which is good.
I think people will make lists that put these things on here because people have written articles, but I don't think basic people are going to know what the fuck this is.
I agree. So I bet there are probably more people, myself included, that can reference the fact that Colossal Cave Adventure exists than understand what the experience of playing it is. Like, I understand Colossal Cave Adventure is a huge text adventure game with a very complex map from what I've seen. But until I actually sit down and would have tried to play it and map it out myself, because, like, the game isn't going through a walkthrough. The game would be getting lost in there and figuring it out yourself. If you've never done that, you don't really know what Colossal Cave Adventure is. And I don't. And I'm pretty into, like, old game stuff, and I don't know what it is. So, yeah, 1975, you're out. We're doing pretty good. No one's going to remember any video games. All right, Johnny, I might fight you on this one. 1976, we've got Breakout, Seawolf, Death Race, and Night Driver. I know a lot of those aren't really important games.
Nope.
You don't think Breakout's going to be remembered?
No. And like, and this is kind of a condemnation of early stuff because most people don't remember like the very origins of movies either. And most people don't give a shit. They're not like, oh man, I watched a 10-minute film about a light bulb. That was great. That was one of the early. You don't remember that was one of the most important films.
Breakout is not that bad. Come on.
No, Breakout is like, look, I like Breakout. Okay. I like everything about Breakout. It's not being remembered.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I think
if you try to talk to someone and you tell them about this game, they're not going to remember that. They're going to be like, oh, what was that one? I think I played a game like that once, but it's not going to be Breakout they're thinking about.
I think, see, that's the thing. I think that the concept of a paddle and ball is maybe not common, but like it's such an iconic kind of gameplay genre
I think it gets lost in the shuffle.
It gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, but like there's too many games like this, so I don't think people are gonna like. No one's like, it's not the definitive game of that type, so it's not going to stick.
See, the only reason that I'm even giving your argument merit is because I feel like even today, the average person, if they saw a Breakout game, they would call it like an Arkanoid clone. I mean, I think it'd be 50-50 between people who call it Arkanoid and Breakout.
And I think that's fair. And like, but I think if you just like, people would be like, oh, the game with the ball and the paddle, oh, Pong. No, it's got the blocks, and then they'd be like, you mean Tetris?
All right.
And like, I think that's what's going to happen.
All right, I'll give it to you. You know, I think I'll give it to you for this reason. You see, I think the genre has merit, and I think the gameplay mechanic is certainly something that will be remembered and understood.
So I would say it's very influential, very important.
But I think most people probably don't even understand. Taste the biscuit, John. I think most people can't like picture or think about what the original Breakout actually is. Like the arcade game, and I think it was ported. Was it ported to the Apple I or was it the Apple II? I don't remember. It might have just been an arcade game. See, I don't even remember. I know Steve Wozniak made it.
And Nolan Bushnell, like it's important. Like it's important. I'm not denying that. That's not like, and like it was remade. Like you could play it on the Game Boy Advance if you wanted to.
It's I'm like sure all the Atari, 100 of them on your phone. It's in every.
No, I'm saying exactly Breakout. Like because in all the Atari collections, Breakout is always there.
Okay, yeah. But even is Atari 2600 Breakout the game I'm talking about right now? Because really, when I'm talking about 1976, I'm talking about the arcade game. And I'll give it to you. No one knows about the Breakout arcade game. Like I've never played the Breakout arcade game. I played all the different ports of Breakout. So
yeah. Oh, well, there was a port on the MSX. You want to talk about how important that was?
All right, Johnny. Let me fight you now. 1977. Okay. I don't think was maybe a huge year for software, but we did have the Atari 2600, the Nintendo Color TV game series, which is the first series of Nintendo consoles, Apple II, TRS-80, and Commodore PET. And I put Sprint 2 as a game. Sprint 2 is not going to be remembered. I just was writing down thoughts.
So I'm imagining myself right now as whatever BuzzFeed is in 50 years, writing an article. I can feel myself writing about the Atari 2600 and maybe the Apple II.
Okay, those are the two I highlighted. It is strange to not think of the Apple II in the context of also the TRS-80 and Commodore PET. Really, the big thing of 1977 was the accessibility of home computers. Like multiple competing good home computers all came to market at the same time. It was kind of fucking awesome. I feel like the Apple like TRS-80 is pretty important too. I don't know that much about Commodore PET. Like Commodore 64 is what you really think about.
No one's going to know about the TSR-80.
All right. I think, yeah, Atari 2600 is a lock. You know, I kind of, like, I want to just get rid of the Apple II even. Like, if we're thinking about in context of, like, we could only think of, like, 2 to 4 movies from the 1940s. Like, I might axe the Apple II. As someone who loves the Apple II, it hurts.
I think maybe the Apple II might survive just because Apple has its own cachet, and I think it's going to be brought up. Like, I think the name Apple, like, props it up.
Okay, well, here, I could already give you an argument against it. Let's go find someone in their 20s or 30s and ask them to name 2 Apple II games, and they won't be able to do it.
I don't think they'll be able, but we're not talking about the games. We're talking about it just existing, right? Like, people are going to write an article about old games.
Okay.
Like, I don't even think this gets to count because you didn't even put a game in here because no one gave a shit about any games from 1977. They're all forgettable nonsense.
All right. 1978, Johnny. There's only one game, and it's Space Invaders. And it wasn't even a huge year for games. Atari Football is a cool black and white arcade game. No one's going to remember it. Computer Othello, I think, is Nintendo's first arcade game. No one's going to remember it. Space Invaders is obviously going to be remembered forever.
Forever?
Yeah.
I think if we have to pick, like, I think there's a chance Space Invaders falls off.
What are you talking about?
I think there's a chance.
You think there's a chance Space Invaders falls off?
Yeah, I do.
Man, I don't.
Who's talking to you about Space Invaders that aren't collectors or old people?
I mean, kind of the same thing with some of these old movies. Like, all right, Sunset Boulevard, Johnny. Like, that is not, like, I'm not going to talk to the random person on the street of it, but you don't need to be, like, an absolute cinephile to know and have seen Sunset Boulevard. It is, like, one of those really popular movies that everyone
Sunset
with, like,
Boulevard
a passing interest in the film scene.
They also had a very strong Broadway run that continued itself into the 90s.
Johnny, I'm not going to hear arguments against Space Invaders. I know you're going to let me have it, but...
I already put the point there.
Okay.
I let you have it, but I'm just... keeping you open that, like, if we have to kill our darlings, Space Invaders on the block.
1979, Johnny. Some of the bigger stuff released: Asteroids, Galaxian, Hyonkyo Alien, obviously not. Lunar Lander, Temple of Apshai, obviously not. Akalabeth, kind of obviously not. I put in television here as a joke because obviously no one cares about television.
No. Like, people don't care about Intellivision right now as a collectible artifact.
I'm going to give it to Asteroids, Johnny. I mean, you're not going to agree if you're even wobbling on Space Invaders. I think people will remember Asteroids. I'm sorry. Johnny, look, people in the future, the golden age of arcades is too important. People are going to have to think about these games like Space Invaders and Pac-Man.
Like, like Pac-Man.
Exactly. I know.
Just like Pac-Man.
But like it's like when people think about like the 50s, there's like this certain contingent, there's like these 5 Japanese movies, there's like Akira Kurosawa movies, and like all the thoughts go to like this small handful of movies. That small handful is going to be these Golden Age arcade games, and Asteroids is going to be in there.
You haven't seen Seven Samurai? What about Hidden Fortress?
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Yes. But like I understand that a lot of years are going to have 0 remembered. I think we are allowed to choose one from a year if it is fairly significant. I think Asteroids is fairly significant. Give it to me. I'm taking Asteroids. I know.
Look, you said you were taking it. I put the point there. Again, ratifying this. And you got to remember, I have my own biases. So, like what I remember and what I think is going to stand up.
You see, I'm biased here too because I had Asteroids on Atari 2600, but like I know Asteroids is super popular, but it is also one of the older Golden Age arcade games that I think about.
All right, let's get to a relevant decade, 1980.
All right,
I say that as someone born in the 70s, 1978.
1980, Johnny. We've got Pac-Man, Battlezone, Mystery House, Zork Adventure, Space Panic, Missile Command, Rogue. You already put the one because it is Pac-Man.
It's Pac-Man.
Pac-Man will definitely be remembered. Kind of too important and popular. Kind of similar to Space Invaders. Don't know why you fought me on that one.
Yeah, because people are going to definitely, like, if you, like, look, I have a Hallmark ornament of Space Invaders, okay? And Asteroids, as a matter of fact. And Pac-Man. But,
you know,
like, that gives you your argument more credence, but I think, like, more people definitely know about Pac-Man, right? Pac-Man was a fucking craze. Space Invaders was popular. Pac-Man is a craze. People wrote songs about fucking Pac-Man.
One guy wrote songs about Pac-Man. Actually, I think they're Japanese
records.
records.
If there was a popular song about Pac-Man, okay? There was a cartoon. There was cereals. Show me your Space Invader cereal. I had a breakfast tray that had Pac-Man on it.
The first esports competition ever might have been Space Invaders.
Okay, and where are those people today?
Dead. That was 50 years ago. Adults were playing that, Johnny. Come on. I don't want to think about adults. I'm a cool kid.
I see what you're trying to do here, but I also hear the lack of confidence in your voice right now as you're wavering and just feeling distressed about how Space Invaders isn't going to be remembered in 50
God.
years.
Everyone is going to be on my side. No one's ever on my side. By the way, whenever anyone like writes in to give their opinions on the show, it's only ever when people disagree with me. Someone write in and agree with me for once.
People agree with you all the time on the Discord.
All right. I think it's interesting because I think of games like Zork, really important interactive fiction game. Adventure, basically like the beginnings of the adventure game genre in a top-down sense. Like people aren't going to play them. There's too many games.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people already don't play Zork, but
it's amazing that we have Rogue on there and we have a whole genre of games called roguelikes, and that's not going to be remembered. People are going to remember the phrase roguelike, but they're not going to know rogue.
That's crazy because there's already other games named after genres like Metroidvania, and I feel like people have played Super Metroid and Castlevania, obviously. But like, how many people have actually played Rogue? Even I don't think I've played Rogue. I played NetHack, which I think is very similar to Rogue. But like the actual game Rogue, I don't think has really carried on.
I don't even understand how it got that much credence, actually, to like define a whole genre.
Because Beneath Apple Manor is basically the same thing, but came earlier, right? Right? That's what you're getting?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't know.
I bet you know what? AM game.
Whoever somebody made more games that were like Rogue, and they probably named the genre based on what they knew is how that happened. But don't name genres after other games. It's the worst. I hate it.
It is kind of the worst.
It's like calling every first-person shooter a Wolfenstein 3D. Like, it's ridiculous.
You know what it's like? It's like defining a word using the word in the definition. Please don't do that. Don't do that. That tells me nothing. It's a completely worthless name. We have no context here.
And then there's roguelite. There's a different genre that uses rogue in its name, but it says light because the mechanics aren't really completely identical to rogue. It's
rogue like
the name of the genre if you're telling me it's not like rogue. It's like
also,
a little like rogue.
Say rogue light and then rogue like and find the difference.
Oh my god.
Please stop doing this. Anyways.
1981, Johnny.
Pole Position, the most important racing game ever made.
Did I not put down Pole Position here?
You did.
That's 1982. Johnny, 1981, some of the bigger games. Donkey Kong, Ultima, Wizardry, Frogger, Utopia. No one cares about that, but I like that game. Castle Wolfenstein. Obviously, Donkey Kong is the most important one here. And Frogger, I want to give a nod to Ultima and Wizardry, but I don't think anyone's going to fucking care.
Frogger's more popular, I should say.
Johnny, shut up. Donkey Kong kind of has everything going for it.
Frogger got a cartoon.
Frogger got a Coleco mini arcade cabinet, too.
Yeah.
Ultima and Wizardry, real important games, Johnny.
Yep.
But who fucking cares?
Where's their children's cereal? And they have no credit. Could you imagine a Wizardry cereal?
Got rich enough to go to space. That dude was on the International Space Station. He made the first movie in space.
Yeah, but why didn't he make games that were more popular?
He made games that was popular enough to go to space. Shigeru Miyamoto, never been to space. Also,
yeah, you're right. He's way more popular than Shigeru Miyamoto, way more successful.
If you haven't seen the movie Richard Garriott Made in Space, this was like a NASA project, so you could just go look at it on YouTube, I think. It's really cringy and bad. Like, you might imagine a bunch of like really, really smart scientists in space might look making a YouTube video in like the mid-2000s. Just something to look at.
1982 is hard.
1982, like truly like one of the best years of arcade stuff. Let me just list off some of the better games here.
Oh my god! And I feel like they're not quite A tier. They're like B plus tier.
There's so many.
They're
B+
all
games.
So good. Yeah,
all
they're
right.
Galaga,
Dig Dug, Pole Position, Miss Pac-Man, Donkey Kong Jr., Jungle Hunt, Robotron, Joust, Moon Patrol, Tron, Q*bert, Burger Time. Like, I know like Tron, Q*bert, and Burger Time aren't going to make it. Pitfall, E.T. just for the notoriety. Miner 2049er, obviously not going to make it. That's some of the bigger stuff.
I feel like this is a compilation disc I've bought one time.
So there's three. The three that I would seriously consider from that list are Galaga, Pitfall, and E.T. Because I think that E.T.'s reputation of being the worst game ever made, which is obviously an exaggerated and strange reputation, I think that is carrying forward a little bit, and I think the video game crash of 83 will be a remembered moment in video game history, and I think E.T. will continue to get more of the share for the blame for that than it probably should. I'm willing to say E.T. won't be remembered, though. Believe me.
Yeah, like I'm on the fence on E.T. and like Tron I'm real on the fence about too, like because it's a beloved cabinet. Like people love Tron and it was a movie, but I don't think it holds up.
I think Tron is like the Home Alone thing of people who grew up with it, like really love and remember it, but I don't think it goes.
Yeah, I don't think, man, it's too bad because like I love Jungle Hunt too. Like, man, Jungle Hunt and Pitfall came out in the same year. What a great year for adventure gaming.
You think Pitfall makes it? I mean, man, Pitfall's real important, Johnny.
Pitfall's...
If I picked like one Atari game to make it, it would probably be Pitfall or E.T. But I don't... Maybe I'm forgetting something big.
I think Pitfall's more prevalent than Galaga, but again, like Galaga's an arcade thing, and Pitfall's an Atari thing.
Very true.
I think Pitfall makes it. Like,
there's also part of me that is like, all of these are like in public popularity and in the mindshare, like kind of all of them are B plus, A minus, and kind of all of them might not make it, but it feels like they're too important that none of them make it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's like a bunch of people, like even Miss Pac-Man, like people love Miss Pac-Man, and it's like it's a better Pac-Man. So come on, what are we doing?
How many people go back, like even today, how many people go back and play Pitfall? Johnny, this is
I don't think people do. Do people go back and play Pitfall? And if they don't go back and play Pitfall, are they going back and playing Galaga? Galaga's awful.
I mean, you don't need to. Oh yeah. By the way, yeah, Galaga but I'm just gonna say, because I could sit there for 20 minutes on one quarter, I loved it as a kid, but man, it starts out way too easy. Galaga's kind of super boring sometimes.
It was a game that made me realize that challenge was important.
Also, there's a bug in Galaga where I think if you just sit on the first screen and dodge 255 shots, you become invulnerable for the rest of your credit. And so I forgot if it's complete invulnerability. You're probably just invulnerable to bullets. Fun fact, go try it at your old arcade.
Yeah, if you can find it.
You could sit and play Galaga for 3 hours.
Man, I could be convinced that none of these make it.
Oh, you're killing me, Johnny.
Like, Burger Time was popular, but it's not like... man, that's so hard. This is hard.
None of them make it. If nothing like sticks out as like, this is the absolute fucking Donkey Kong of this year, none of them are going to make it. Which kills me. Like, Pitfall's so important, but fuck it. 1982 is probably the best year that we've come across so far, and we're picking no games from that year.
Yep. Great year for gaming, though.
1983, Johnny. Some of the games I picked out: Mario Bros, Star Wars, Ultimate Exodus, Manic Miner, Portopia Serial Murders Case, definitely going to make it, and Bokosuka Wars, definitely going to make it.
Nope.
You kind of just think nothing here?
Nope. Like, look, Mario Brothers is important and Star Wars is important, but they aren't the best iterations of them, and they aren't the things that made them popular as far as games go. Star Wars was super popular just because, like, we got a game from the movie, and it, like, oh my god, and it wasn't dog shit. Like, it was like a really good, like, port for a movie game. You know, very, very much an arcade quarter eater. But, like, is that really going to be remembered? I don't know if that's the Star Wars game people are coming back for.
The only thing I would flip-flop on is Mario Bros, and then it comes back to, like, if something isn't smacking me in the face that this will be remembered forever, then it won't. And I specifically remember growing up, because I born in 1989, I grew up not knowing what the original Mario Bros was. So I played Super Mario Brothers 3 with my friend, and I didn't understand that the mini-game that we were playing was actually Mario Bros. And I don't think I ever figured out what Mario Bros. Was until GBA e-reader, probably. I'm like, oh, this is an arcade game. Or was that the NES version? Either way, I think e-reader is when I figured out that Mario Bros. Was its own game.
Interesting.
So, meh. I'm good to say nothing will be remembered.
Yep. And I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to let people shout at me about 1982 and 1983. And be like, Johnny, you're insane. Like, definitely this is going to be remembered. I don't know if you'll convince me, but I'm willing to think about it.
Man, I want to go back and say Galaga.
Nope.
Johnny, 1984, some of the more popular games: Elite, Jet Set Willy, Karate Champ, Punch-Out, Karateka, Impossible Mission, Pitfall 2, and Tower of Druaga.
So I'm going to say no, and it's weird. Like, as much as I love Pitfall 2, I think Pitfall 1 is still, like, the more remembered game, like, in the mind share of the people. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that. So if Pitfall doesn't swing in, then Pitfall 2 definitely isn't.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I think all of these are, like, really important and interesting games, but in terms of popularity, I don't think, like, these are very video game history, old gamer type games to me.
Yeah. And I love Pitfall 2. Like, I mean, from the dawn of this show, like, I've pooped on Atari a lot, but never Pitfall 2. Never, ever.
Okay, Johnny.
All right.
1985, the Famicom releases. So here we go. So we have been, I'm going to say we've been sparing our picks early in the 80s, which will maybe let us pick some more games from the late 80s when there are perhaps more memorable games. So 1985, Super Mario Brothers, the rest of the NES launch titles, Duck Hunt might be the most popular among those. Gradius, Gauntlet, Ghosts and Goblins. I mean, Super Mario Brothers obviously is in there. I think everything else doesn't make it.
I agree. I only gave it a 1. You see my 1 over there.
I sure do. And like very specifically, like Duck Hunt. Fuck Duck Hunt. I don't understand why people remember Duck Hunt to this day.
Well, I think because the novelty of the zapper. So I think that's going to carry it a long way, and I think like it might get like some credence because of that. But
you know, there was probably just like less to do in the 80s, Johnny, because I played Duck Hunt with my friend, and when we played it, we would play like 1, maybe 2 rounds, and then swap it out for something else. But then I think of another thing that is completely a novelty, Wii Sports. Like, I played a lot of Wii Sports. Like, I can understand, like, yeah, if you're a 9-year-old and you have a Nintendo and there's no internet and there's nothing to do, like, yeah, you'd probably play a lot more Duck Hunt. But I think the novelty is maybe overrated. Anyway,
so.
I'm mostly here to shit on Duck Hunt. But yes, Super Mario Brothers will make it forward, Johnny.
Yep. All right. Whew. That's rough. Because I love Ghosts and Goblins, but I just don't. I'm really trying to kill my darlings here.
Yeah, I mean we got to understand. We're looking at this from the perspective of someone in 2073. So like, people are not going to give a shit about most of this stuff.
Okay, like look, it's 2022, right? Or 2023, and my son is 4. In 20 years, he'll be 24. So this is like his kids, maybe his kids, like
better
his
be
kids.
Some pretty baller games to last that long, Johnny.
Yeah, I have to think about whether JD's kid, if he ever has one, would know this. Yikes! And that's only 1940. So let's say by the time he's 20, it's 2060 something, and it's like, oh yeah. Grandpa, I have never heard of any of these. What a bunch of weird artifacts you have. And I'm also not going to be alive in 2060, so most likely not.
Hope, Johnny.
I mean, maybe. I hope. I can hope. I hope, but I mean, 78. So that that puts me at 82. Who knows?
Medical advances. Johnny, you know what? I think did we talk about on the show, or was this after dark, if we would want to live in a virtual world that made us 100% happy, but it wouldn't be the real world, so we wouldn't know that. We would basically plug into the Matrix.
That was, I think that was after dark, and I think we were talking about wishes.
Okay. So, YouTube has been putting me on a nutrition kick, and there's been a lot of talk of like sugar and dopamine and stuff, and I realized that like TikTok almost is like engineered to give you the most dopamine while you're sitting there in a catatonic state, actually doing nothing with your life. That is probably the closest that we have right now to plugging into that dopamine matrix, and I think it's like the worst thing ever. So I think in that episode I said I would plug into the dopamine matrix, but after seeing heavy TikTok users, or just like the idea of being a heavy TikTok user, I'm thinking maybe I don't want to plug into the dopamine matrix.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't. It's a weird question, and I'm unsure about the answer still. But let's make this really hard on me, and tell me about some of my favorite games ever, and whether I think they'll last the test of time. Let's really test my resolve here.
All right, 1986, Johnny. We've got The Legend of Zelda, Dragon Quest, Metroid, Castlevania, and then Outrun and Super Mario Brothers 2 we could basically throw away because they're not going to make it compared to those. Now, we were sparing. We didn't even put Galaga on this list, which I'm going to say gives us at least 2 here. All right, so Legend of Zelda is obviously going to make it. Dragon Quest seems like it should obviously make it, and...
Really?
Really? You don't think Dragon Quest does?
No, I don't think it does.
Yeah, you're right. That's kind of one of those things that matters more in a historical context, maybe, than something people would actually go.
I just don't think, I think the idea of the long RPG like that is going away, and it's just going to be a footnote, and people aren't going to want to play games like that. So, how does the series continue? I love the original Dragon's Quest, right? 2 and 3, 4, 5, I like 6. 7 was fine. Once we start getting 8, 9, 10, those aren't even the same games anymore, and I'm out on those.
I mean, I don't care about the Dragon Quest series. I only care about Dragon Quest 1 for its historic importance. I've never played any other Dragon Quest.
So that's what I'm saying, though. If I'm already, out on the series and it's still in my lifetime.
All right. I'll give you the... So... You're going to argue for Final Fantasy, though, which does make sense. I think Final Fantasy is a better game.
Yeah, Final Fantasy is a better game.
I think Final Fantasy is a much better game.
Yeah, look, I love them both, but as far as playability and quality of life, Final Fantasy. Also, Final Fantasy is just a little bit better. I love them both. The real question is, do Metroid and Castlevania make it?
That is the real question.
Outrun is not making it.
Yeah, obviously. I just put some other popular games. Outrun's obviously not making it. Johnny, Castlevania is a much better game than Metroid, I think. Metroid is a much more important series than Castlevania.
I don't think the original Castlevania is necessarily a better game than Metroid.
Well, we'll respectfully disagree with each other then. I mean, if you think Metroid's a better game than Castlevania, then Metroid should probably make it.
I don't think, I think I like Castlevania 1, 2, and 3 a lot. But I think the best Castlevania is none of those. And I know a lot of people disagree with me, but Symphony of the Night is, to me, the best and most complete Castlevania.
All right. I'm going to say Metroid is such a pillar of Nintendo, being when I think of Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Donkey Kong, Splatoon, the big ones. I'm going to put Metroid forward, Johnny. I think everything Nintendo is too important.
Man, does Castlevania not make it? Oh, I'm having heart palpitations. It's hard.
These are old enough. These kind of older. When we get into the 70s and 80s, I feel like we can go and ask someone who's 18 years old now. How much do you care about the original Castlevania? Are you familiar with it? Have you played it? And get an idea. I'll put it forward. We went 1, 2, 3 years in a row. 1982, 1984. We picked nothing.
I'm gonna put it 2.
All right, we're axing Castlevania. We're putting forward Legend of Zelda and Metroid. Sorry,
I mean, and these are individual. It's hard to talk about these as individual games too, because that's why I was trying to bring up that point about franchising. Because I think a lot of the Zeldas and the fact that they just they don't remake Dr. Zhivago or reprint Dr. Zhivago continually and try and get kids to play it on oh, here's your free game with this service that I bought. So games have a little bit of they have a different trajectory than old movies. So I'm trying to think if that phenomenon and the franchising means Metroid is so big and Castlevania are so big as a franchise, they'll still be remembered. And I leaned it out of Castlevania because it's not Nintendo directly.
Okay, I agree with that logic. I'm trying to think of how historically important is Castlevania. Compared to platformers at the time, Castlevania is fucking rad. But it's most of the reason Castlevania is remembered really just because it's fucking rad. But I know it is a large, complex game with a cool theme for the time. But also looking back to the year before that, even then we had Ghosts and Goblins, which isn't that far off from Castlevania. I think most of the reason Castlevania is remembered is because it's fucking rad, and there are so many rad games that stuff that is just rad is the stuff that's easiest to forget over time.
Well, look, Ghosts and Goblins has whatever it's doing, right? It's great. I love Ghosts and Goblins. But Dracula and a whip are fucking cool. Okay? When you're a kid and you're playing games, Ghosts and Goblins is hard. Sure, it's hard. But, Castlevania also hard, but they give you a whip and you fight Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
It's just way cooler. You're just like, oh man, I'm in. Like if we're talking about what's more important, like if I had to put one on a list, whereas I agree that Ghosts and Goblins, it's like an action platformer where you fight monsters and thematically they are similar. Castlevania is leaps and bounds ahead of that, and also the series grew in complexity and depth, whereas Ghosts and Goblins didn't really evolve too much.
Johnny, the 1935's The Informer is a movie about the underside of the Irish War of Independence and centers on a disgraced Republican who anonymously informs on his former comrade and spirals into guilt as his treachery becomes known. I don't know, sounds like a pretty rad concept for a movie, but no one cares anymore because we've got too many rad movies to go back to some old crap.
Yeah. It's true. All right. Oh, man, I don't know. Like, I might have to think about adding Castlevania.
All right. I mean, you are very personally attached to it, also.
I know. That's why. That's like I'm just saying. Like, my bias is so strong. I don't know if I can properly answer it. So, I think you have to make the call.
All right. I'm gonna keep it out for now. I like axing stuff.
Okay.
I think I didn't even realize like how little of the best pictures of 1940 I had even heard of. Like, I don't know what Yankee Doodle Dandy is. I'm sure it's some stupid American propaganda bullshit, but don't know. Song of Bernadette, don't know what it is. Mildred Pierce, don't know what it is. Double Indemnity, it's on my Plex server. Don't know what it is.
You've seen movies from the 40s, though. Like, Citizen Kane. Like, obviously, Citizen Kane.
Sure.
We just fought about it not too long ago. And Casablanca,
I've seen those, yes. I got a Citizen Kane poster on my staircase because
That's what I'm saying.
Right next to my Pulp Fiction. I'm lying. I don't have a Pulp Fiction poster.
You should, though.
It makes me a film bro if I put up a Pulp Fiction bro poster.
Yeah.
My posters, Johnny, they are Space Jam, The Truman Show, Citizen Kane, There Will Be Blood, Batman and Robin, and Zardoz. What a selection.
You are so gross. Batman and Robin.
Oh, good movie. 1987, right, Johnny. Here are some of the important games. Final Fantasy, Zelda 2, Ys, Metal Gear for the MSX2, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Maniac Mansion, Leisure Suit Larry, Sid Meier's Pirates, Dungeon Master, and Phantasy Star.
Whew.
I just want to make it, like, explicitly clear. Like, when we pick one, all these other ones go away. Like, we pick Zelda and, like, Dragon Quest, Castlevania, Super Mario Bros. 2. People are just, like, not even going to remember those games exist.
Maniac Mansion is not making it. Neither is Leisure Suit Larry. Neither is Sid Meier's Pirates. Isn't even in the discussion. Dungeon Master.
I mean,
Fantasy
I just
Star,
put,
give me a
like,
break.
some stuff.
Yeah.
Like, some of these are kind of important for series and genres, but I know they're not going to
make it. Look, I'm not saying these are all arguably important games. Like, they're great.
I like Final Fantasy.
I like Final Fantasy as well. Again, too personal for me. Are we saying that Zelda 2 doesn't make it?
Zelda 2 absolutely doesn't make it. But even going back, when people look back on the history of Zelda, it's going to be like Zelda to... They might go from like Zelda to Ocarina of Time or something. Like, they just might be like, yeah, Zelda's the 2D Zelda, and then forget like these other 7 games that are basically the same thing, and then we arrive at Ocarina of Time. Like, when it comes... If there's another 40 years of that and people have to cut down their, like, how to catch up on the history of Zelda down to, like, 5 games, that might be, like, the speed track as you go from Zelda 1 to Ocarina of Time. There's no way Zelda 2 makes it. It's such, like, a weird, different game. It's awesome, but awesome is not what makes things historically remembered.
I'm just going to tell you, more movies. Like, if I, like, it's weird. Like, people, like, I don't think people realize how old Disney movies are. Because there's so many old Disney movies that are still beloved today. Like in 1940s, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi. Yeah, there's just a lot. It's a lot. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Come on.
I don't know what that is.
One of my personal favorites, but I don't think that's like highly remembered.
Fantasia, 1940.
Yeah, I said Fantasia first.
Oh, did you? Okay, my bad.
Or second, first or second. Anyways.
I feel like maybe... You see, like, is Disney the Nintendo of movies in that sense? Like,
it is, yes.
Is that why we're going to have Metroid Remembered?
that's what I'm thinking. It's like franchises, it's something that is iterated upon and you keep seeing instances of, and people are made to remember it for one other. Like, people know who the Headless Horseman is in Disney, even though it came out in 1949 and is a part of a combo of The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, right? Like, Mr. Toad, in some instances, is even more popular. But not everything survives. Like, I know the Three Caballeros, right? But not everyone does, right?
I don't know what that is.
Do you know?
A Disney movie?
It is.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, there's a Zelda 2 for you right there. Probably not even. That's like, yeah. Zelda 2 is probably like even more popular than that.
That's the sequel. Well, I picked the Three Caballeros because that's the sequel to Saludos Amigos. I mean, not sequel, but shared character.
This sounds like some Devil World bullshit that no one actually remembers.
And then you have things that are controversial in the 1940s, like Song of the South, which is talked about now, but I don't know how many people actually watched it or just know about the controversy.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I bet there's plenty more people who specifically don't watch it now, but I must have watched it because I know Zippity Doodah, right?
I mean, but that was just a popular song that they put everywhere, and it's on the ride Splash Mountain. Like, everyone went on Splash Mountain with ever saying, and that's kind of my point. That's where I'm trying to equate Disney to Nintendo and how their franchises survive through time, because there is a collective effort of a large company to make sure that it survives through time.
Sure. And you see, I think this is a perfect analogy that I didn't even think of, because when we are going back through these like movies that are decades old, you could think of like, there's kind of like the Disney movies that everyone remembers, and then there's like everything else, and kind of the everything else are a little bit more movie people movies, a little bit for people interested in old movies, or like they're absolute bona fide classics, you know, Miracle on 34th Street type stuff. But then, like, you're telling me, like, there's probably 5 Disney movies from the 40s that I've seen.
Yeah, well, and they keep releasing it, right? Like the way we're going to keep releasing Zelda over and over and over again. Like, this happens with Disney movies. So, yeah, I've been struggling to find a comp and to see if I can justify picking Castlevania.
It's not happening.
But we'll keep it out for.
I mean, maybe like if we really are sparing with our picks, maybe I'll let you go back and pick 3 games from 1986.
Okay.
From 1987, right, Johnny, Final Fantasy, I'm gonna say makes it. There's been.
Right, I'm gonna agree.
What, we've got like almost 40 years of history from Final Fantasy at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's okay. Yeah, here's another hard year.
Oh, see, like we're not even considering any of these other ones, but yeah, I think
those
right.
are all out. Yeah, like, not even close. Like Zelda 2, I think you can make an argument for. I think you can make an argument for Metal Gear, but not this version of Metal Gear.
So the reason I put Metal Gear for MSX2 is because when we're really thinking from someone in 2073, they're not going to give a shit that Metal Gear released on NES and that's the version everyone remembers, because no one is going to have remembered any of that. They're going to look at what is the first Metal Gear game, and if they're historically interested in Metal Gear, they're going to be like, oh yeah, it's Metal Gear for the MSX2. But I mean, that's not going to be what makes it remembered.
No, they're going to, but see, I don't think they're going to care about that. They're going to go back and remember Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or, I mean, it's very possible that the Metal Gear series doesn't matter beyond Metal Gear Solid. Because Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid, like, huge franchises from the 80s to the 2000s, and then kind of Konami fucked it up, and now it's not going to be a franchise going forward, basically. Like, if Kojima's not involved, he doesn't care about anything that comes from the series anymore.
Yeah, basically these could fall off completely.
Absolutely. 1988, Johnny, we've got Tetris, Super Mario Bros. 3, Mega Man 2, Ninja Gaiden, Wasteland, Pool of Radiance. I know that those later ones aren't going to make it.
Nope.
Tetris obviously makes it. I think Super Mario Bros. 3 has to make it. I mean, it's not just like Super Mario Bros. 3 makes it. There are movies that people just know because they are super, super good, and Super Mario Bros. 3 is one of those movies. Mega Man 2 and Ninja Gaiden, as much as I love those, I don't think they're going to make it.
I'm just going to call Super Mario and Super Mario 3, Toy Story 1, and Toy Story 2.
Weird, but okay. Why?
Just to prove that you can have a sequel that's also great and people remember both.
We're going with Toy Story 2 for that? Like, I don't know. Like, I kind of remember Toy Story 2. I remember Toy Story a lot more.
Toy Story 2 is great.
I mostly remember the collector guy because I really identify with that guy.
Yeah.
And I remember a scene with them crossing the street. I don't even remember the overarching plot. It's something to do with the girl cowboy. Woody
has been stolen by the collector, by the guy who was Newman in Seinfeld. He is stolen at a garage sale, and the toys go to get Woody back. And Woody's only out there at the garage sale because Squeaker, I think, is being put in the box. I think it was Squeaker is being put in the box to be put out there. So they ride the dog out. Woody gets seen. The guy gets very excited because he knows that this is very collectible. Tries to buy it. The mom's like, no, Woody's not supposed to be out here. And then dude just swoops on him anyways, grabs him, takes off back to his chicken barn. The toy store is called the barn or something, but he winds up in a chicken suit doing commercials. Anyways, that happens, and he's going to sell all. He's got the set. Once Woody was the rare piece, which is weird because Woody was the feature of all of the show and everything. So it's weird that the main character would be the hardest to find. Really, it should have been Stinky Pete was the hard one to get and was keeping the set incomplete.
You should have sent up your notes on that.
Yeah, I mean, I will next time. So, just as a collector, the most popular named character that you're making all the merchandise around, and this guy's got a whole room full of merchandise that features Woody's face, but the doll can be found, but everyone else. Anyways, yeah, so that's what happens, and he's selling them to a museum in Japan, but the museum or something in Japan only wants him if he's got the whole set, and that's why Woody was important. And then Buzz and them make the trek to tell Woody to go rescue Woody. And then Woody's like, maybe I should just go and be a toy on a shelf and where people can still view me and love me. But the gang convinces him that no, he's got to come back. And it doesn't matter if Andy's kind of pushing his toys aside because he's growing older, that, it's important that he still be there for Andy and also for his toy friends. And he realizes that at the end. And then brings Jesse and Bullseye with him.
All right. Thanks for the Toy Story 2 plot summary, Johnny. Next time, just say Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. It'll be a lot clearer for those of us who aren't up on our Pixar history.
I was keeping with the Disney analogy of the times.
Did Disney own Pixar when Toy Story 2 was made? Doesn't count. So. We can't go back into acquisitions with this analogy. That doesn't count.
I think Disney owned Pixar then.
Oh, we're looking this up.
Okay.
When did Disney buy Pixar? I'm ruining this analogy. January 2006. Toy Story 2 definitely came out before that.
Okay.
Bam! Analogy ruined. There's Star Wars. Our Star Wars is owned by Disney games. Too.
Hey, yeah, now.
So it's just as much sense as your analogy.
Listen. Toy Story 2 is listed as a Disney Pixar film even back when it was released.
All right, you win. I don't know why that is, but sure.
Anyway.
I think the most important thing to take away from 1988 is Mega Man 2, you're out of here. No one's going to remember you. It's only going to be for hardcore platform guys. And Ninja Gaiden, you weren't even in the running, sorry. Top 10 game of all time, basically.
I think that's right, what I'm saying about the Toy Story poster.
All right. 1989, Johnny. Some games we've got here. SimCity, Prince of Persia, Super Mario Land is definitely not going to make it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mother.
What?
DuckTales, Castlevania 3, and Populous. And I know those last ones aren't going to make it. DuckTales is my example of a game that's not going to make it. And Castlevania 3, I just kind of put because, man, that is one of the best games. That's one of the best games of all time, but it's one of the best NES games. But that alone is not going to make it remembered, I don't think.
Is it going to be crazy if I say none of these make it?
Yes. Fuck you, Johnny. SimCity is definitely going to make it. It doesn't matter. It's too important.
Who cares? Is it important or do people care about it? Who's going to care about Who cares about SimCity right now?
I don't think people need to care about SimCity to know what it is and use it as an analogy in other games. If there is some kind of base building mechanic in a game, I think people in the future will still say, okay, you do this part and then you get into the base building part and it's basically like SimCity over here. Like, I could definitely see that being used as an analogy forever. It's the iconic
but they do
city
that
building
with
game.
Rogue right now. They say, oh, it's a roguelike, but Rogue isn't that important.
You're right, but I think SimCity is more popular than Rogue.
I'm gonna say none. Maybe.
Oh, I'm holding fast that SimCity will be remembered. No, it's too important. I can't do it. Even people who don't play computer games know what SimCity is. And yes, it was on Super Nintendo, and that's an awesome version of the game. But, like, I feel like my boss would know what SimCity is. I'm keeping SimCity. Fuck you. I'll get rid of Prince of Persia and Mother and all this other shit. I'm keeping SimCity. You can... This is our first one that we might really disagree on, but you can note that however you want.
Okay. I'll let you put your point there. I'm letting you put your point, but I disagree.
All right. 1990.
And I did confirm that it does say Disney Pixar on the poster.
Okay. I don't know what their relationship was. Sure. You win. Toy Story 2 analogy is valid.
Thank you.
Johnny, some of the biggest games from 1990. Super Mario World, F-Zero, Bonk's Adventure is not one of the biggest games. Dr. Mario, Wing Commander, Secret of Monkey Island, and Commander Keen. The only games that even have a shot here, I think, are Secret of Monkey Island and Super Mario World. And we're just gonna go with Mario World?
Mario World.
I think that the point-and-click genre... is that genre just not going to be remembered?
It hasn't survived to today.
Fuck, that is so weird. Man, what are like dead movie genres that...
Without limited run games, are people even talking about The Secret of Monkey Island right now? They put that shit out on PS2 and no one gave a shit. They put it out on the Sega CD and nobody gave a shit.
That's so weird that it's on PS2. You're definitely right. I feel like if people think of the point-and-click genre, or even like just the adventure game genre... Like, Secret of Monkey Island, is that the most popular game that people think of? It's like that and Maniac Mansion?
Look, Guybrush Threepwood, he's great. Like, I think there's a world where I'm wrong and Secret of Monkey Island is remembered. But if I didn't put Castlevania in there... okay,
all right.
That's...
Yeah, Super Mario, like... I mean, yes, Super Mario World will obviously be remembered. Like, how much bias is there going to be for Mario? Like, I guess, going back to, like, Mario 1, 3, and World will be, like, going back to the Star Wars trilogy where, yeah, there are 3 movies in the same franchise, but everyone kind of knows them because it's fucking Star Wars. All right.
Yeah. Like, we didn't put Mario 2 on there. Mario 2 didn't.
Mario 2 doesn't count. Mario 2 is the Star Wars Holiday Special. Sorry, everyone. Game's like an 8 out of 10.
Fuck 1991.
So we got Street Fighter 2.
So I've got a lot of F-bombs in this episode. Sorry, guys.
Sonic,
just, angry.
Sonic the Hedgehog, A Link to the Past, Super Castlevania 4, which isn't going to make it, and Civilization. If Castlevania doesn't make it, Super Castlevania 4 doesn't make it, even though it's the best Castlevania game. Street Fighter 2 obviously makes it. It's way too important. People still play it today. Sonic 1 is very interesting.
Does Sonic 1 make it? Because Sonic 2 is more important.
I don't think anyone cares about Sonic 1. I think people care about Sonic the character, but Sonic 1 is like... If people looked at all the 2D Sonic games, they're like, yeah, that's the worst one.
Yeah.
But... I mean... But, Johnny, it's Sonic, and Sonic still exists. Will Sonic exist in 40 years? Like, maybe, probably.
When it's owned by Nintendo, sure.
Oh, I'm going to say Link to the Past is a no.
What?
Yeah. I think if 40 years from now, I think that I'm right that people will just go, like, Zelda to Ocarina of Time, if you're, like, trying to fast-track Zelda history.
I
mean, Link to the Past... But, like, I mean, are people going to skip Super Metroid? Like, fuck.
I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to highlight
some of the weird ones. I agree. Let's go back to some of these. So, Link to the Past, I think we should go back to. SimCity, we'll go back to. And Castlevania, we'll go back to.
Okay.
All right.
We'll highlight those. I'll take it out for now. So right now, it's just hard for me to say Street Fighter 2 over Link to the Past about anything.
I mean, it's not a better game. It's
I know, and I'm trying to keep in the parameters and keep my bias out of it.
So Sonic 1, I feel like kind of falls into that Galaga category where it's like it's emblematic of its era, but the game itself, like, who is really thinking about Sonic 1?
I think Sonic 2 is going to make it.
Ooh, you think Sonic 2 is gonna
1
make
isn't? Yeah, because there was a lot of fanfare around Sonic 2.
See, I think that Genesis is already faded so much in the current crop of the younger generation that in 40 years, like, Genesis just isn't going to matter.
So here's the question, because games are hard, but is Sonic 1 going to be more important than Sonic 2 in people's mind? Because I think Sonic survives as a character, right? He's surviving right now. He's got 2 movies that were popular. There will probably be a third one, I can imagine. He'll get a new cartoon series. It's a character people like. Does that matter? Does Sonic 1 get the nod when and Sonic 2 was the game that was a pack-in? I mean, they were both pack-ins, but I think Sonic 2 was more, I can't even say that for sure, certain. And I think Sonic 3 is the better game that, we're going to talk about. I just think Sonic 2, Sonic 1 became popular, became a hit, grew in time, and then people were very excited for Sonic 2.
I agree. So, going back, let's think about me. Fuck your film degree. Let's think about what I know about movies from the 1940s. Here's what I know, Johnny. I don't know shit. I know Miracle on 34th Street because it was playing on cable TV. I know It's a Wonderful Life. Are those both Christmas movies? That's so weird. But I don't know the circumstances of the release of It's a Wonderful Life. Is that early in Jimmy Stewart's career or late? I have no idea.
I have no context.
I have zero context. So I don't think people are going to remember things like, oh, this was the popular one, this was the pack-in. They're just going to think oh, Sonic. And which game comes to mind when people think Sonic? And there's a problem here. Sonic 1 is obviously the first. Sonic 2 is, I'm just going to say, the first good one and the first absolute mega, mega popular one. And Sonic 3 and Knuckles is the fucking best one. And if there's kind of no right answer between those three. You put those 3 in front of me, I'm going to pick Sonic 3 and Knuckles. But you put that in front of, someone who isn't interested in the best game, is interested in the history, it might be Sonic 1? Or it might be none of them. I think Sonic might just get Sega'd out of history. I think Mario does everything Sonic does better, pretty much, and people might just remember Mario.
I think Sonic 1 actually sold better, too.
I think it's hard. I don't know the actual sales numbers, but Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, they had such big pack-in runs that what really does it matter?
Yeah. That's hard.
Let's go back. We'll come back to it. I'll just keep Sonic 1 highlighted.
Okay.
We'll keep Link to the Past for now. All right, you put 1, so I'm going to unbold Link to the Past. So, we'll come back to this, but for now, we're saying 1991 Street Fighter 2 is our game. I'm sorry. It's not the best game. Everyone's going to remember Street Fighter 2 forever, though.
Are they?
1992, Johnny. Sorry, Link to the Past.
Well, why? Yeah, okay. Go to 1992.
I think we might come back to Link to the Past. 1992, Johnny. Some of the bigger games. Wolfenstein 3D, kind of the first major FPS. Super Mario Kart, kind of the first Super Mario Kart game, which is one of Nintendo's most popular franchises.
Popularized kart racing forever.
Sonic 2, Alone in the Dark, and Ultima Underworld.
If Sonic 2 doesn't make it, nothing makes it.
Oh, I'm disagreeing. Get out. I think Wolfenstein 3D makes it. I think
why?
it's
why?
Pretty, it's
why?
Wolfenstein, I think that it's a combination.
Why is it going to be remembered?
It's a combination of the technology and the history of first-person shooters being a very popular genre, leading to Doom, which led to everything. So, Johnny, think of real-time 3D games before Wolfenstein 3D. So before 1992, They probably suck because Wolfenstein 3D is the game that really popularized ray casting, which is what gives us that kind of... It looks like a 2D maze. It is very simple, but it's not a wireframe thing that you like boop around in little chunks. You actually run around in Wolfenstein 3D, and it's fast. And I'm not saying that from it's a fun game, so it will be remembered sense, because all the games we're talking about here are fun games. But it is a particularly important one, I think.
Not all the games we're talking about are fun games.
You're right. We did have
we talked about games from this Atari Football.
Atari Football's fun. What are you talking about? You ever played one of those with the trackball? That game's awesome. Hurts your hands. Gotta move that ball a lot.
Anyways, I think that Wolfenstein 3D is very important, but I don't know why anyone's going to remember it or play it. And I don't they made a Wolfenstein that just came out. What was that on the Xbox One?
Sure.
Not even the Series S.
Still a franchise.
Still a franchise?
I don't think Wolfenstein will still be a franchise in 40 years, to be clear. But I think it's such a, forgetting all nuance, just doing everything with a blunt hammer. If you ask someone, what is the first-person shooter, like Wolfenstein 3D...
That's not what we're gonna ask, though. We're talking about...
I know,
does it stand the test of time? You just told me why it was important, not why it's popular.
But I think it is popular for that reason. Like, obviously, Doom is going to be bigger than Wolfenstein 3D in absolutely every way. Do you really think people aren't going to remember and play Wolfenstein 3D? Like, in the context
I'm just going to tell you, in what you just said, then Sonic 1 is going to be remembered for blast processing.
No, fuck Sonic 1.
That's a joke.
Sonic 1 is a platformer. Mario already perfected platformers. We didn't even have the first-person shooter genre. We kind of did, but before Wolfenstein 3D was not popular. And that's a really popular genre. Let me tell you about Fortnite's is that a first-person or third-person? I don't know if Fortnite's a first-person or third-person.
If you told me Counter-Strike, I would agree with you, but Wolfenstein 3D, I don't know.
I can't believe we're disagreeing on this. All right, I'll highlight it. We'll come back to it. Super Mario Kart, how do you feel about Super Mario Kart?
Nope.
All right, I'm there with you. I think so. Mario Kart is weird. It's a weird series to pick any one entry because it's one of those games where I think everyone's favorite Mario Kart is their first Mario Kart or the latest Mario Kart. So
yeah, like Super Mario Kart, I loved. I played a ton out of that game, and it's on my favorite system, and it's still not. I just like Double Dash and Mario Kart 8 are just. They're just to me, Mario Kart 8 is pretty much just the definitive Mario Kart in my mind.
I mean, it's the latest one, so I don't know how to...
It's the latest one, but it was also the last one and the one before that, so...
Also, did it come out like 10 years ago? How old is Mario Kart 8? That game's from 2014. That game is 9 years old.
Dude, and the 3DS one was really good. Which one? Was just called 7?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good, but like Mario Kart 8 is just like they just iterated and iterated, and it's like an iPhone, right? I know a bunch of you don't like iPhones or whatever, but if you think about the iPhone one, you're not going to say that's the greatest iPhone because it was the first one, but you might be like, oh man, I really love the iPhone 4 or the 10 or whatever. 10 was garbagey actually, but
all right,
you take my meaning.
Going back to movie analogies, I'm going to say like maybe if I'm thinking about James Bond movies, like. Maybe people go and watch the best James Bond movies and not the earliest James Bond movies. So yeah, we're gonna fuck Mario Kart. Sonic 2. I'm sorry, Sonic 2 is not gonna be remembered, Johnny.
So which Sonic is being remembered?
I mean, I think it's Sonic 1 or nothing. I think.
Really?
I think that's it. I think everyone you talk to is in their 30s and 40s. Obviously, we all love Sonic 2, but I just don't think it's.
But I mean, like JD already loves Sonic. He runs like Sonic.
He's your son.
I have never, I don't love Sonic games, and I have not showed him the movies, but Sonic is so prevalent on, like, YouTube and other stuff, like...
Okay, but what is going to bring him specifically to Sonic 2, then?
I don't, just because it's better than Sonic 1, and if it, gets put on a compilation, they'll probably just drop in all of them, but, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, which makes me think Sonic 1 has to be the answer.
that's kind of like it's coming back to the situation where like I don't have a good answer and I want to default to Sonic 1, and then it comes back to like the if it doesn't slap us in the face like Donkey Kong, I don't want to put it at all kind of thing. It feels like Sonic as a franchise is too important to have nothing remembered from him.
Right.
But
I think Sonic slaps you in the face, but I don't know which one is doing the best job of doing it.
Here, I'm going to say this. So here's how we're going to resolve this, because this probably applies to movies and music and shit too. Let's put Sonic as a franchise, or like the concept of Sonic, and we're going to add that to the list, because there probably are like movie franchises and musical artists that people are more familiar with the artist than a specific song from the artist. Right?
Yeah, I would say like people like Prince, maybe. People know a couple of his hits. Like they're gonna know Sonic 1, Sonic 2, but like I don't think everyone knows. Like Prince is very popular, but I don't think that many people are familiar with his whole catalog.
Give me a Glenn Miller song that's not In the Mood. I'm trying to think of stuff that's really old, Johnny, to make it the same thing. All right,
I don't know what Glenn Miller is.
He's a big band guy. 1993. Don't give me errata. I don't know if Glenn Miller's big band.
Go on.
1993, Johnny. Some of the bigger games: Doom, Secret of Mana, Star Fox, NBA Jam, FIFA, Kirby's Adventure, Mega Man X. Probably more Super Nintendo stuff I'm not remembering or didn't put here. I think Doom is a lock.
See, but I feel like Doom and Wolfenstein are doing the same thing.
What? Get the fuck out. You can't delete both. This is not a Sonic situation.
I'm not deleting both. Doom. I just think if I'm picking between Wolfenstein and Doom, I'm picking Doom.
Okay.
You don't disagree with that?
No, I obviously don't disagree with that. I don't think anything else from this year is going to make it.
All right. I think Doom makes it. I'm not a crazy person. I think Doom makes it.
1994, Johnny. Some of the bigger games: Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Final Fantasy VI, Warcraft, and Elder Scrolls Arena. Ooh, you're putting one here. I don't even know which one you're picking. Well, it's probably just Super Metroid.
It's Super Metroid.
I mean, that's right.
Well, hold on. I forgot. Warcraft, like, does Warcraft just make it?
No,
or
fuck
like
off. No, Warcraft sucks. Fuck Warcraft.
Like, I would just take StarCraft over Warcraft, and then I would take WoW. Right?
Exactly.
Like, that's how my brain goes.
No one is going to go and play Warcraft, Orcs, and Humans. If anything, people will go back to StarCraft, maybe, but no one is going back to Warcraft, Orcs, and Humans. Like, this is Super Metroid is one of the games I think, yes, it is important to the platform adventure genre in general, but I think it's just one of those movies, like, I don't know, what's some movie that's remembered just because it's fucking awesome? I don't...
Empire Strikes Back.
Rope. that movie's... sure, whatever you just said. Yeah, Super Metroid I think will be remembered. It's too popular.
I just equated, like, Star Wars as Metroid and Empire Strikes Back as Super Metroid.
All right. That makes me want to go back and put Link to the Past, because it's basically the same thing as Super Metroid.
Yeah. Yes.
We'll go back to it. 1995, Johnny, we've got Yoshi's Island, Chrono Trigger, Rayman, Twisted Metal, Star Wars Dark Forces. I can't believe that made it on my list of important games. That game is rad, though. The Sega Saturn entirely. I put Panzer Dragoon, but Sega Saturn. Donkey Kong Country 2, one of the best platform games ever made, and Warcraft 2, the better version of Warcraft 1. And you went ahead and highlighted Chrono Trigger, which I think is correct. It's one of those games.
I also think, I'm highlighting it, but I'm not convinced.
Well, I'll convince you. Like, the team behind Chrono Trigger was like the who's who of like anime and video games.
I think it's the most important like RPG on the Super Nintendo. Having said that, it's not a franchise that continued. It's dying. It's dying a death, and no one is allowed to come back to it. So how does that survive in 20 years? I mean, if some of these movies, I guess, continued despite that, if we're talking it's the Skippy of its time, then sure. But
Well,
I just don't.
I don't think it's the Skippy of his time. I think there are creators that have like this timeless quality to them. The Alfred Hitchcocks, the Stanley Kubricks, the Akira Kurosawas of the world, and the team that worked on Chrono Trigger. I think they will be like in that realm. Akira Toriyama, people like that guy's art. Like Dragon Ball Z will be forever one of the animes that makes this list. I think
send your hate mail directly to me, but I don't like that art, and it's what I don't like about Dragon Quest and what I prefer about Dragon Warrior. Like, because like the box art, that's kind of taken off. Yeah, and the Chrono Trigger art is just like nothing to me. It's all about the game. The art does the art styling does nothing for me. I think it looks great as a game and pixel art and playing, but like the box art and like the images on the map and stuff, like that stuff does nothing for me. I don't think Dragon Ball art looks particularly good.
Well, it's a good thing it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what history thinks.
I mean, I'm the one who highlighted it. I said yes, but like I'm also like if nothing ever happens again with Chrono Trigger, I just think its place will eventually be erased.
You see, you say erased, like, yes, maybe, like, not everyone who ever exists will play it, but I mean, like, some of the stuff from the 90s will be the things that shine the brightest when people think about stuff from the 90s. Like, I don't think... The only reason someone wouldn't know Chrono Trigger is because they don't care about the 90s in general, I think. Like, if you look at the top 10 games from the 90s, I think Chrono Trigger might be in there almost all the time.
You know who's not going to care about the 90s? Everybody born in 2004.
Yes, 100%. I can name 4 movies from the 40s, Johnny.
Tyler, I was born in 1978. Do you know what television shows I think were cool from the 70s?
None?
None.
Yeah.
And like I like 4 movies from the 70s. Music, pretty much don't care about. I mean, we got like a couple bands here and there, but like the 1960s, Tyler, do you know what 1960s movies I'm really after or thought about as a kid or wanted my parents to tell me about? None. None of them.
The Brady Bunch is pretty good. Come on. You gotta love the Brady Bunch.
No. Brady Bunch is awful.
Love the Brady Bunch. All right.
Anyways.
Johnny, 1996. Super Mario 64, Pokemon Red and Green. I'm just putting because I did say I'm doing Japanese releases just for consistency. Super Mario RPG, Crash Bandicoot, Resident Evil, Quake, and Tomb Raider. That's a pretty banger year. This might be a 2Z.
Is it a 3Z?
No. Oh, okay. Resident Evil. Oh, man. Man, I think Pokemon has to make it. I think Mario 64 has to make it.
Does it, though?
I mean, yes,
I think you're probably right.
Sorry. I think it's like Yoshi's Island, we didn't even consider it because it kind of already has this, like, almost like spin-off game. Like, people think of it almost as a spin-off game when it's such a good mainline Mario game.
It's a fucking art piece.
It doesn't matter. I don't think it'll make it.
Man, I don't know what's going on with these. I'm just like, I don't know. Got a lot of F words coming out of me. All right. I'm going to say 3, which is crazy.
Like, historically, if we look back, there's probably not a single year from the 1940s that we are going to say 3 movies made it. I feel like we're using our modern bias here. Although the problem is that, 1996, we're getting to this point where, like, the transition to 3D and the enablement of new genres does make a lot of things really important here.
Yeah. So, also, I'm going to say Resident Evil is also a good representative of the whole series. Like, whereas I think maybe 2 doesn't make it, I think Resident Evil continues, like... Maybe you come back in Resident Evil 4 because it's such a big jump, but they also keep remaking it. They keep putting it out everywhere. Like Super Mario 64 is Mario in 3D. And then Pokemon it's Pokemon.
I'm not letting us pick more than 10 games for this entire decade. And we've got some more heavy years coming up.
I mean, I just don't know if that's the right kind of shift, because like when things were in their infancy and not that great, like in the 70s, right? Like that's maybe like the 1930s in movies. Like maybe there wasn't 10 great ones that are still remembered, but the 1940s has all those Disney movies, so maybe we made it. Like, I don't know. Like, let's see where we end up.
All right.
My initial thought is 3.
You're right. I forget about the Disney movies. All right. We'll keep it at 3 for now. I feel like we're ruining the spirit of the episode that makes those hard choices.
Are we? You wouldn't let me put Link to the Past on here.
I think
Castlevania.
Castlevania doesn't make it.
And I hate the idea of putting Mario 64 on this list.
Come on.
But I think it's important. And I think it'll survive. I just think it's only going to survive because people are going to be like, it's the first one. But Mario 64 is not the best Mario.
They made it for Switch. They remade that game fucking twice. They did it for DS and then Switch again.
Yeah.
And they will keep doing it.
They remade Castlevania like 5 times.
That doesn't... putting it in a compilation...
They remade Resident Evil 3 or 4 times. Who cares?
It's not the latest thing. When did Mario 3D All-Stars? Just a few years ago. The Resident Evil remakes were older than that. I'm sure they remade Resident Evil. What am I talking about?
So, yeah, it's just like...
I'll see if I have to fight you down. We're almost done here. We'll see if I can fight you down. Johnny, 1997, some of the biggest games. GoldenEye, Final Fantasy VII, Symphony of the Night, Ultima Online, Star Fox 64, not one of the biggest games in 1997. Maybe. Diablo, Fallout, and Grand Theft Auto 1. That gets really heavy on the PC stuff there.
Is Diablo more important than Diablo 2? I know that's not exactly the right question.
It's the wrong question. I mean, Diablo 2 is a much better game, and I think more people played and remember Diablo 2, and it had a much longer life. Like, Diablo 2 lasted well over...
Diablo just died. It was just a thing. It was cool, but Diablo 2 was forever.
Yeah, once Diablo 2 came out, everyone stopped playing fucking Diablo, but people still play Diablo 2 to this day.
So, Diablo doesn't make it for me because of that.
I think Fallout...
Even though it's very important.
Man, cutting Diablo sucks. I could cut Grand Theft Auto because I will concede that Grand Theft Auto 3 is probably going to be the most important game that's remembered there. Fallout, I think there's other RPGs that will be just as remembered.
Yeah.
So I don't think Fallout makes it. Final Fantasy VII, I'm going to have a pretty hard time cutting Final Fantasy VII.
I think I think I didn't put Final Fantasy VI. I think it's a better game, but I think Final Fantasy VII, what it did for Sony, its importance, like, I just think it's, one, I think people love it and will keep talking about it. And it was very important in the console wars in general. Yeah, I think Final Fantasy VII makes it.
Okay.
And I think Symphony of the Night makes it.
I'm not going to agree with you on that.
You don't think Symphony of the Night? I mean, I can see maybe Symphony of the Night not making it, but like, you're just like, you're a Castlevania hater, so you won't put any Castlevania games on this list.
Yeah. I think Symphony of the Night and Castlevania are probably the 2 Castlevania games that might make it. Like, they'll definitely be in that, like, under absolute top tier of history. Like, everyone will still know about those games. In 40 years, are people going to know about a like?
They just put Castlevania and Symphony of the Night into Dead Cells.
I don't know what that means. What do you mean?
Oh, well, look it up later. Do you know Dead Cells?
I know. What do you mean they put it into it? You could play those games in Dead Cells or what?
There's a Dead Cells Castlevania.
Okay, it's already Castlevania.
Yeah, but it's now Dead Cells. Anyways. Highlight. If we can fight about it. We're almost done. You can highlight it.
All right.
It's worth.
See, I'm gonna cut Diablo.
I think I don't think Diablo makes it. For the reason I stated.
Diablo's one of those games where, like, yes, it's extremely important, but maybe it's more like putting it in the context of film, like something that pioneered like cinematography techniques, and like everyone recognizes the impact, or everyone like feels the impact of it, but maybe not everybody goes back and plays the original Diablo 1. So, sorry, Diablo.
And I know people are going to be like, GoldenEye! No. Look, you know what's going to happen? like, I was like, oh, I was in college and in the military, and in the dorms, everyone was playing GoldenEye, and me and my friends were on the couch. Yeah, old man, I get that happened. But, kids today, like, just, they don't care.
1998, Johnny, some of the biggest, like, I could probably list 40 games from 1998, so let's just keep it to Zelda Ocarina of Time, Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil 2, Banjo-Kazooie, Dance Dance Revolution, Half-Life, Radiant Silvergun, and StarCraft. But yes, there are a lot more than that. Nope. Johnny just highlighted Zelda Ocarina of Time and Metal Gear Solid. Oh, like,
yeah.
The thing is, I think the importance of Metal Gear Solid will wane a little over time because I don't think the franchise will hold up over decades.
Okay.
I think Metal Gear Solid was a lot more important to everyone when they were still making Metal Gear Solid games. Like, obviously, Metal Gear Solid is a very important game to the PlayStation, important to stealth action, important to storytelling in games.
I think people might know Resident Evil 2 because they keep remaking it, but I think Resident Evil 1 is doing the job.
40 years is a long fucking time. I think for a sequel to make it 40 years, it's got to be like
exceptional,
really, really something.
I mean, and Resident Evil 2 is I think technically a better game, but Resident Evil is still a great game, and I don't know.
So
I don't think Resident Evil 2 is making it. I don't think Banjo-Kazooie is even in.
No, it's nowhere next to it. I think it's just a very beloved game.
Yeah. DDR, like, maybe, but also I don't know if the dance craze, if anyone is going to know about this in 40 years or give a shit. I forgot. I forgot StarCraft.
No, you're picking too many games, Johnny. Because also Half-Life, yes, but also like.
Oh shit! I didn't see Half-Life.
Yeah, Johnny, there's a lot of shit.
DDR to Radiant. Man, this is a banger here.
So. I think Zelda Ocarina of Time is a clear winner here, and I'm not saying that because it's my favorite game.
You love the N64.
Yes, of course. Over a long enough time frame, I think if people map out the timeline of Zelda, the jump to 3D is going to be such a big turning point in the series for what is like top 3 series of all time that will be remembered in Zelda, that it will always be the one that's remembered. So Ocarina of Time has to make it. And yes, there's an importance factor to it being action adventure genre and all that. Doesn't matter. The fact that it's the first 3D Zelda makes it a shoe-in to begin with, kind of like Super Mario 64. See, like, kind of the rest, because we've already picked so much from the 90s.
I'm gonna let you off the hook though. From 1999, I'm picking nothing.
So wait, hold on. So we agree on Ocarina of Time, and then you also bolded Half-Life and StarCraft.
Yeah.
And in an important sense, sure, yes. I think StarCraft doesn't make it. I think the real-time strategy genre just isn't popular enough. Like, there's probably movie genres that we could liken to real-time strategy, and it's just like, people don't watch this because it's not as popular genre.
I'm willing to let you cut it. And Half-Life, how do you feel? You gonna cut Half-Life out of here?
Man, if we're cutting Wolfenstein 3D, we might need to cut Half-Life, Johnny. Which feels nuts. It is so important. It's ridiculous. I
don't think Valve is so important, not even beyond this. Are you going to tell me that people aren't going to talk about Half-Life?
All right, we're keeping Half-Life. You're right. So, like, PC gaming is synonymous with Steam and has been that way for 20 years. So that's probably not going to be the case in 40 years. That's a really long time. But they are a digital company, so they could still be relevant in 40 years. Maybe not, but they have been relevant long enough that people will know what Valve is, and Half-Life is their most important game. And it's so important in the history of narrative and things. Even now, like, people are way more invested in narrative of games than, getting high scores and becoming masters of games. And I think Half-Life and Metal Gear Solid are both so important in that. All right.
Yeah, I think that's part of the transition. All right.
1999, Johnny. Some of the big games.
What is this abbreviation? How I Met Your Mother 3? What the hell is going on?
Obviously, Heroes of Might and Magic 3. That's a shoo-in. That's going to make it, Johnny.
So here's what the acronym was. It's HOMAM 3. I'm like, what is this? HOMAMs.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Silent Hill, Super Smash Brothers, Mario Party 1, Soul Calibur, System Shock 2, Age of Empires 2, and Unreal Tournament. Man, those are good games.
I know you're angling for Unreal Tournament.
No, not at all.
No?
If we were questioning Half-Life, Unreal Tournament.
I'm just saying, like, because the Unreal Engine, like, doesn't make it relevant.
I mean, if people are, no, I don't think people will go back. And
I just don't think this Mario Party is representative of the Mario parties. Maybe it is, but also I don't think people are going to care about Mario parties.
Yeah, I don't think Mario Party is big enough. And then Smash Brothers, I think Melee is obviously the one that's going to be remembered.
Yep, obviously the pick. Silent Hill is great, but are people going to care about that? Like, it's a Resident Evil ripoff. It's just Resident Evil ripoff, right? So it's like just lesser Resident Evil in the eyes of history. So yeah, I can't pick any of
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. The genre is too niche.
Yep.
System Shock 2, I think maybe kind of a niche genre in that it's like it's a really complex FPS RPG, and it's not really a style of game that made it forward as cool of a game as it is. Age of Empires 2, if we didn't put StarCraft on here, Age of Empires 2 isn't making it. And obviously Heroes of Might and Magic. All right, nothing from 1999. It's good to have another nothing year after a bunch of years with multiple picks that I don't like. Oh, and see, no, here we're going disagreeing again. 2000, Johnny, some of the bigger games: Deus Ex, Diablo 2, The Sims, ooh, lots of computer games, Counter-Strike, Zelda Majora's Mask, and Paper Mario.
I just don't care about The Sims, and I think that's part of my bias, but I don't care about The Sims.
There's no way I'm letting you put Diablo 2 on this list and not Diablo.
I just think Diablo 2 does, like, I think a Diablo needs to be represented. I just think Diablo 2 does it, where, like, the same way Smash Brothers doesn't do it, and I would put Melee on here, probably. I just, like, would put Diablo 2 over Diablo 1.
I mean, you're right. It is way more playable. 40 years. Like, The Sims kind of falls into that category of, like, a Civilization or, like, a Microsoft Flight Simulator.
I just think that is going away.
I mean, yes, I think that, like, I don't think people will genuinely play The Sims anymore. I think, like, people are probably more interested in maybe playing the original Animal Crossing than The Sims, even if The Sims is probably the more important game.
I think people will go back and might try out Diablo 2 to see where it started before they go play The Sims. Mm-hmm. The Sims is, like, unplayable fucking garbage.
I mean, I get that argument, sure. I don't agree, but yes.
Ugh, The Sims.
And then it morphed into, like, this
Sims
weird microtransaction nightmare for moms. All right, Zelda Majora's Mask, I think we can cut. I think Ocarina of Time is going to fill that slot.
Yep.
Counter-Strike, Paper Mario. Kind of like if StarCraft isn't going to make it, Counter-Strike's not going to make it. Like, Counter-Strike is a multiplayer-only game, too, so, like, who's going to go back and really play that?
I think Counter-Strike is super important, but I think it's pretty niche already. I don't think it's making.
Are you serious? Is it not, like, the biggest non-MOBA esport?
Yes, but I think people who consider themselves gamers aren't necessarily thinking about Counter-Strike.
Well, you don't consider PC gamers gamers. But I get what you're saying. A little bit. Sure.
You know what I mean. Like, it's not that I don't look. I just talked about how Diablo 2 was important. It's not like I'm just shitting on all those.
I'll give it to you. I think yes from an importance perspective, and yes from we've got to have games on here that are just, like, fucking rad, because some movies are remembered just because they're rad. Sure, Diablo 2. We got something from 2000. Okay. All right, Johnny, let's break this down by decade. 1970s, unless you have something else to go for.
I just was going to say, it's that we didn't put 2001 in there because I think it would have been a hard year, because you had Grand Theft Auto 3, which I know you would have been angling for. And then we got Melee.
Do we really not have enough years in this episode?
No, I was just saying, like, that's like, it was just like an interesting year and had Animal Crossing in there. So it was just, I know some that you personally like a lot.
So it would be Halo, Grand Theft Auto 3, Melee. I don't think Melee makes it against Grand Theft Auto 3 and Halo. And then a bunch of shit that's obviously not going to touch those two. I mean, Halo has to make it.
Yeah, Halo is too important.
I think Grand Theft Auto 3 has to make it, but the fact that you're arguing me now as someone who lived through the era and is like a very involved person in video games, like how is someone 40 years from now not gonna ignore it or something?
Well, I mean, and to be fair, I wasn't a Grand Theft Auto guy.
All right. I mean, even going by our standards this episode, I might just pick Halo for 2001.
I would pick Halo, and I would consider Melee, but I think Melee falls off, even though that's hard. But I would definitely pick Halo.
Melee kind of suffers from the same Mario Kart thing, where it's like, if I just play the latest, I'm probably getting the same experience.
Even though I think, like, whereas I think Mario Kart 8 is like the pinnacle, I don't have that same feeling about the new Smash Brothers. Even though it's great, like when I play it, I'm enjoying it. I am getting the Smash Brothers experience, but in my nostalgia brain has just like Melee, like being the king. Like for N64, it was fine, but suddenly Melee was a revolution with the amount of characters and stuff. And this iteration of Smash Brothers is crazy. Like, yeah, I very much feel this Smash Brothers is very much like Mario Kart 8. So, okay, I concede my argument to you.
All right. I don't care about 2001. Just picking Halo, but it's not part of our episode.
No, I would just want it. I just think Halo. Really, I just think Halo is super important. Even though I'm not like a super Halo guy, but it's also the Xbox and that, like, it's just emblematic of like that generation, like what was going on right then. So, yeah, Halo was super important. So, just like. Since you put 2000 on there, I was putting 2001.
Johnny, from the 1970s, we picked Pong, Atari 2600, Apple II, Space Invaders, and Asteroids. Just from a historical context, like, Asteroids is not in the same league as those other things, but we picked so few games that I'm not going to cut.
You felt like you had to. You felt like you had to pick Asteroids.
I don't feel like we had to pick it, but I do think it is. I mean, it's a big game. It's a big game. It's Asteroids.
Okay, I could take or leave Asteroids. I could be -1 here.
All right. 1980s, Johnny, what we got? We have Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, nothing for 3 straight years, Super Mario Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, the Nintendo trilogy here, Final Fantasy, Tetris, Mario 3, and SimCity we disagreed on. 5, 6, 7, 8. That is 9 for the entire decade of the 80s. The 1980s, we picked 9 games. I'm keeping SimCity. It's under 10. There's no... I'll even let you add in Castlevania there. How about that? That'll bring us up to 10 for the decade. You really think Castlevania is going to be more remembered than Galaga?
Yes.
Okay. Pitfall, E.T.?
You think people... Who remembers Galaga now?
It's just such a golden age of arcade.
It's such yes, yeah.
You put it in there. If I'm making a golden age arcade, it's gonna be Donkey Kong, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga. Dig Dug. I don't know. Galaga's in there every time. Not like from an I want to play it perspective, but if I'm making like a fucking movie, it was just so popular. Anyway, all right, Galaga doesn't make it. Do you want Castlevania in or out, Johnny?
I'm thinking about it. I'm just thinking, stick and hoop was really popular in golden age of kids playing outside. I mean, it's no hide and seek, but, a game that's actually stood the test of time. Yeah.
All right, 9 or 10 games from the 1980s. We're not going to listen to you wait and think about Castlevania. It's just a thought experiment.
All right, I'm putting it in.
All right, from the 1990s, we have Super Mario World, Street Fighter 2, the concept of Sonic the Hedgehog, Doom, Super Metroid Chrono Trigger, Pokemon, Super Mario 64, Resident Evil, Final Fantasy 7, Zelda Ocarina of Time, Half-Life, and Diablo 2. Diablo 2 doesn't count. That still feels like too many games.
Does it? How many do we have?
So our definites are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that is not including Symphony of the Night, Link to the Past, Wolfenstein. Here, I'll even get rid of Wolfenstein for you. I don't like.
No, keep it in. Like,
all right,
like keep it in. 12, right? Okay, so you got 12 there.
No, I have 13 with Wolfenstein.
Oh, you have 13 with Wolfenstein? Okay. I'm just trying to think, does Link to the Past have to make it or no?
I'm looking up the... All right, I just Googled best movies of the 50s, and if I can immediately be like, oh yeah, definitely there's more than 10 that I'm going to recognize, then I'll let you put in all of them. So let's see.
Okay.
All right, so Akiru, sure. Vertigo, sure. North by Northwest, Singing in the Rain, Paths of Glory, Witness for the Prosecution, Sunset Boulevard, Rear Window, Seven Samurai, and 12 Angry Men. I have seen or I know literally all of those movies.
Okay.
So maybe we can have a decade that's so good that we can pick this many games.
Let me add some movies from the 50s. Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty.
All right. All right. Maybe 2 games per year is allowed.
Some decades are bangers.
Turns out the 90s are good. But also we have the recency bias and the nostalgia bias.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, the 90s are pretty fun.
Like, it's impossible for me. I grew up then, and some of my favorite system is the Super Nintendo. Like, what do you want? So, yeah, like, for me, you got 13 if you keep in your Wolfenstein, and I wouldn't put Wolfenstein, but I would put Symphony of the Night, and I would put Link to the Past, so I would wind up with 14.
All right.
But I think I could be argued out of Symphony of the Night and Link to the Past, maybe, depending on how hard we were going. And Diablo was from 2000, so, like, I don't know what you were doing if you only wanted to keep this to the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. So we just have Diablo 2 sitting there on its own.
You're like, I can't believe you talked about 2001. I'm like, okay.
Man, is there like... I'm trying to think of what, like... there will certainly be gaming curriculum in the year 2073. Like, people will finally be seriously studying games by then, I imagine. And, like, the reason I excluded Link to the Past is because it's like it's a stepping stone type game. So I'm wondering how many games like that I kind of missed. Like, in 2073, are people going to study the original Metroid, or are they just kind of say, fuck Metroid, here's Super Metroid? That's kind of the one that really matters. Like, what is more important from an academic sense? I mean, I know Metroid might not be like the literal first platform adventure, but is Metroid more important, or is Super Metroid more important, the one that took Metroid's concepts and made it everything we know the genre as?
You see, I think we could add games from the 80s in some regards because it doesn't take that long. Like, I could see Ninja Gaiden sliding in because it's fast, right? Like, no. If the idea of we're talking about curriculums, right? Like, oh, you got to go play these. It's super easy to go play that, right? Like, it's not that long of a game. You can go play The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Brothers, Metroid, and Castlevania, in not too long of a time.
I think when you're thinking of things that are that old, like, you have to be picking things that are so important and so emblematic of the genre. Like, Mega Man 2 and Ninja Gaiden you might as well be able to interchange them. I realize they're not like the exact same genre, but they're both action platformer games, and they're both rad as hell. They came out literally the same year. And, like, if you played either of them, you understand what it is that makes an NES game good. And if you're in 2073 and you've got basically 100 years of video game history to play, like, how many NES games are you going to be spending your time playing? That's just what I'm thinking. Like, yes, there will be NES specialists that are like, oh, this is a really interesting area in history. I'm going to go play some NES games. I realize that if someone uses save states, they could blow through Ninja Gaiden in 45 minutes or whatever. But, I could go watch a movie in an hour and a half, but there are still tons of movies I haven't seen.
Yeah, I'm saying more because I stand by my argument. Like, if you were trying to teach a class, like, and of course those kids are going to go play with save states and modern conveniences. Like, unless they're like weirdo classical purists, which they won't be because they're in a basic class that will make people purist and they will go trying to, but the people who go and just check it out, like, and aren't like trying to live that life, will be like, yeah, it was fine. I played some save states. I got the idea of what this game was. It was a little too hard for me. And I found it frustrating that, like, I can jump off of a building, but I fall down a screen that ends and I just die. Like, yeah, there's going to be those kind of arguments.
I wonder, like, far enough in the future, what are games like Ninja Gaiden going to be? If someone was studying Ninja Gaiden, what would they, how would they present it? Because yes, the obvious thing is if you have a class of 40 students and they don't play like these absolutely ancient trash games, like it is, movies 40 years ago were black and white. People just look at that and they're like, fuck this. Why would I even waste my time? And that's how people are going to look at NES games. And if you also tell them like, oh yeah, by the way, it's also like hard and you have to put effort into this, like this ancient piece of garbage, I understand the kids you're teaching are not going to want to do that. But then like the Ninja Gaiden experience, the thing that makes it the game is like the puzzle solving element of how do I figure out how to get past the screen? And if you're just save stating and blowing through it, you don't learn anything. Or to pick a better example, like a 2D shooter, if you just like feed credits in and you never actually dodge the bullets, you don't learn the bullet patterns. And the whole thing that makes that genre enjoyable to people is learning the bullet patterns. It's like you're missing the point. I don't even know how to put it in terms of another medium because it's kind of a unique sensation to games.
It is a unique medium, but also games are becoming more narrative focused. And, I think that is going to be, I think that's going to be the thing that prevails because stories have always prevailed throughout our history. Stories are the things that stand the test of time. I don't know if, minor skill competitions are always going to stand the test of time.
So I 100% agree, but does that mean that like we're going to say I'm in 2073, we have 40 more years of basically narrative focused games. And you were going to have like your Dark Souls series in there for the people who want more gameplay focused stuff. But like if you're teaching someone NES stuff, do you have to show them the point? Like games here were not narrative focused, and to do that, your homework for the semester is to beat Ninja Gaiden or something. I don't even know how you present it, but I mean the point of NES is that it's not story focused in games like this. So playing through it as if it were a narrative experience like a modern game is not presenting the curriculum,
right.
In my opinion.
I agree. And I think it should be taught like that, and you should experience moments. Like, if you were playing, let's say, Outrun, like, save states don't really do anything for you. If, like, you could try to engineer a perfect run, I guess, but that would be very tedious, and that wouldn't be really playing the game. That would be terrible. But something like Zelda 2, I think you could play that game using save states and still get the enjoyment out of the game.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I think Zelda 2 is a much different game from Ninja Gaiden, though. Because Zelda 2 is really about the adventure, and there's Puzzle solving, and Ninja Gaiden is... Like, Ninja Gaiden as a game...
is a skill test.
Think of all of the mechanics of Ninja Gaiden. There are none. It's like you can shoot your sword, you have a power-up, and there's enemies. It is pure skill test, like you said.
Yeah. And I think that's fine. And I think in the narrative, it'll be important to show that. Like, look at Pac-Man and how it evolved, and then Donkey Kong, and then Super Mario Brothers, and then you can see like, oh, well, that's like, there's a story, but it's also like a skill tester. Ninja Gaiden's out there, and it's a skill. And then Zelda comes out and starts to blend some of these things, at least within the Nintendo. I think you can, if you were teaching a course on NES games, you could show how the system developed and how games changed. and then to what they become now, you know. And there are still branching paths. Not every game, like every game has a narrative almost now, but there's still like many branching paths on like what video games try to go out and do. Not everything is just The Last of Us or Uncharted 2.
Johnny, I'm just going to say there will never be a course on teaching NES games, because like NES lasted 6 to 8 years, something like that. Like not even 8, kind of more like 7. That is just too short of a period in history. Like you would never do like film history from 1946 to 1953. You might do like...
Well, I mean, they're different mediums. So I think you adjust to the medium you are teaching. And the Nintendo is this point in time that is important. You might be one course like video games of the 80s. Like...
Yeah, I think it would be like the entire 80s might be something that...
Yeah, and I could string a curriculum together about like how it went from arcades and Atari, the crash into Nintendo and home consoles, and how the arcade adjusted, and then even pick that up in the 90s and show where things are. So yeah, I can see you focusing it like that, but even small periods of time, there's a lot of differentiation there and a lot to learn.
All right. Also, I think it's funny that I've been saying that like Ninja Gaiden is just like this pure gameplay focused thing, when like Ninja Gaiden probably is an important game in narrative based games just because of the cutscenes. Yeah. I forget because I press start the frame that those things appear to skip them.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways, this is, like you said, it was a thought exercise. There's no wrong answers, but tell us where we fucked up.
Sure. Tell us where we fucked up. I mean, no matter what you pick, the point is, like, this was just, like, the highest of highlights for these years. Like when you type into Google best games of 1996, you're going to get, like, 6 games that are, like, total bangers. Like, your Pokemon, Mario 64, Resident Evil, Crash Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot's not going to make it. Quake, Tomb Raider, stuff like that. And, like, 1 or 2 might be remembered, and just the rest of that is gone, Johnny. It's gone. All these games are gone. What are we doing?
They're gone from the masses unless you're looking. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But also, I want people to realize 50 years isn't actually that long. So think about books. When you were in school, how old was the oldest book you were reading that you were being taught on? In a whole history of having to read books, think about how many are over 100 years old that you had to read.
Yeah.
So imagine what we would be talking about if we had to branch out to 100 years, what will be remembered.
I mean, absolutely, in terms of video games, because like books, like for a book, the reason we don't read as many books from the 1800s is, yes, there are cultural reasons and like the English language reasons, but fundamentally we still speak English and we still have some of the same experience. But, like, can you imagine playing, like, a technological game from 150 years ago? It would be impossible. People wouldn't even attempt it. It would be for, like, historians, basically. Like, not even game historians, just, like, weird people interested in, like, some very specific weird history.
Yeah, let me give you some examples of, like, famous books that people had to read. Pride and Prejudice, 1813. If you had to read Don Quixote, 1605. So, and then you got like The Great Gatsby at like 1925. You have all Shakespeare's work. And then you have things like Slaughterhouse-Five, 1969. So they're like, just think about what it could look at. It's amazing to think about. You're like, oh yeah, how about Little Women, 1968? The history of books and how that's taught, it's so big, and games are hopefully going to be there, in 100 years. And you're going to have to be like, will we be talking about any of this? Like, aside from just like it just being weird, esoteric, the ancient past of video games.
Yeah, like we're talking about this stuff like it's a guarantee that like Super Mario Brothers, Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, and Metroid. Look at all these NES games we picked. Tetris, Tetris kind of Game Boy, but Tetris, Super Mario Brothers 3, Final Fantasy, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Super Mario Brothers. If you go into a far enough time frame, like that's just going to become a bullet point or a paragraph that's like, Nintendo was a popular company that released their influential console, the NES, and had many influential games that were like the early history of many genres. And like, if you go far enough out, like suddenly nothing matters and just the console becomes a bullet point.
No, and they'll abbreviate to franchises like Mario and Zelda.
Exactly.
And that'll be
yes.
it.
Yeah,
like, I mean, just think about what you know from the 1700s. Like, oh, hey, you read much from the 1700s, Tyler?
Let's see. No.
What about so here's something, and I'm gonna have to like do some check because I just like said famous books throughout time, and they put the Iliad at 1770 by Homer, but the Odyssey at 1617. So I'll have to check those because I was gonna put them together. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm not reading a lot of Voltaire here.
How about the Divine Comedy? Like, I mean, people put this out there. Like, the 1800s still has, like, a bunch of examples that people... Like, those are, like, really esoteric, but, like, I read so many books from the 1800s. Crime and Punishment, Middlemarch, Emma, War and Peace. What else did I read? Pride and Prejudice. Let's see. The Brothers...
what is your point? Where are we going?
I'm just saying, like, so it's like, 100 years, will we, like, they still will pick a wide variety of, like, in 100 years, it's going to be interesting. I'm just thinking of all the things, like, you know, we did the exercise, like, what did you watch from, like, the 1930s? But I'm trying to think of what I read and know of the 1800s. And there was more than I thought.
Okay.
It was surprising.
I will bring up my favorite reserved investments quote, which I can't find anymore. But in 500 years, no one will care about Spider-Man. And I love that quote because it's so true. And I think that is... Going back to some of the stuff we were flakier on, like Sonic the Hedgehog, there will be a point where Mario matters and Sonic no longer matters. I don't care. Like, Sonic is obviously still relevant. There's movies and everything. Decades from now, there will eventually be a point, I think, that Sonic does not have the staying power of Mario, and he will go away. I don't know if it's 100 years from now. It's going to happen. And it will happen to Mario too, but I don't think any time nearly in our lifetime.
Frankenstein is 200 years old. I mean, we also have better ways of recording the past now and, like, keeping media, so that's going to, like, change things a little bit.
Well, that actually changes things for the worse, I think, because then there's such a deluge of stuff that we will have that sorting it and choosing what is most important to remember becomes really a problem. Like, I know it comes back to the iOS App Store. Like, we have already decided, like, those are not worth saving. There's too much of it.
I'm really thinking about that quote, you know, in 500 years, Spider-Man won't matter. And I don't know if I agree.
Okay.
Do you think that you really think
from, like,
that's
the
a crazy
60s,
stance?
Johnny? Like, Spider-Man is not old enough to have the pedigree of, like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna last 500 years.
I don't know how it continues because it's new. Like, comic books are still relatively new. They don't have hundreds of years of history, so I'm wondering what they continue like. Like, that's a fair thought experiment, and it's like the architect of a bad quote is because you dismiss something because it has no history yet. So comic books in general could just go away. Like, maybe comics won't last 500 years, and that will be the thing, and that will bear out. But what if they do? Then what happens? If comic books survive 500 years, do you think they won't be talking about Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man, and at least in a historical sense?
I mean, I think I personally don't think that the Earth, or like the majority of the human race, I don't think has 500 years left in it.
That's probably accurate.
But yes, from the fact that we still know, like, Don Quixote, like, sure, I think maybe in 500 years people will still know what Superman is. I don't think the average person on the street might be able to know about Superman. 500 years is a really, really long time. But it'll be in the archives.
But there's a lot of Superman media. There's way more Superman media than Don Quixote.
Yeah, but like, what do we know about 1600s media? if we had to boil down the entire century into like 3 pieces of media, and like, we're going to 500 years. We're doing the same episode we just did 500 years in the future. We're boiling the 1900s down into like 3 things that people will remember. What are those things?
Well, and that's why I was looking at the books, because there's so many books from the 1800s that we're still talking about.
No,
books that are like
that's
200
1 or
years
200
old.
years. 500 years is a lot. You're not reading books from the 1600s.
I agree. So, like, but if there are 50 books that I can pick out from the 1800s that still matter, so between 100 and over 100 years old to 200 years old, then like how many is that? Like, does it shrink by half each 100 years? Does it shrink by more than half? Like, what is the reduction rate?
I have no idea.
So if I can find 50 books that are 200 years old that people still make kids read, and I don't necessarily agree with this, because I think sometimes pulling modern examples is a better teaching method, and I fight with school curriculum all the time. But what does that? How does it shrink out? That's why I want to know. Like, do you think if there's 50 books now, that in 100 years, if we looked at it, that there's only 20 books, 10 books, 5 books?
So I think that the problem you run into when you hit the 1900s is that for like millennia, all you had was books. And then you hit the 1900s, and then all of a sudden it's books, comics, movies, video games. All of a sudden, like, there's a media explosion, and we're telling stories through all these different kinds of media. So I don't think you're going to have 15 books from the 1900s. I think you're going to have 50 pieces of media, maybe. And like, some of that's going to go to movies, some of that goes to books, some of that goes to games. I don't think many are probably going to games.
Do you think the concept of school and the way we teach people is going to go out the window?
It is really difficult for me to think that far in the future, because I am so pessimistic on the human race lasting a very long time. I don't know. We're all going to die in a nuclear war, or AI is going to take over. Come on.
I mean,
I have to.
Or we're already in a simulation.
Did it happen? Are you kidding me?
Tyler, hot take. It is already 500 years in the future. We're in a sim, and we're remembering the golden times.
Oh my god. Oh my! I'm already in the machine. That's why I keep bringing it up. I'm in the dopamine machine. This is the happiest I could ever be.
Yeah, because you can't actually know happiness without strife, so there has to be enough conflict to recognize when things are good.
Oh man, that makes a lot of sense. That explains everything. No one actually listens to Collector's Quest. It's just a number that goes up on a screen to make me happy. Yeah. All these people that I'm interacting with in like the Discord and Instagram, they're all AIs. Oh my god.
So, Johnny, are you my AI? Are you my AI, or am I your AI?
Oh man. The AI would theoretically be conscious, right? So like either of us could be each other's AI.
Oh my god. What if we're neither of our AIs? What if we're one specific listener's AIs that they need this?
We're just a computer simulation that's happening and there's no humans involved, Johnny. This is just like, we're just spinning CPU cycles for no reason right now.
No, I like to think that we are something that somebody else needed. So we are a construct that somebody else needed for their dopamine drip. Oh, and so we're just part of the program that's running.
For just like a few hours a month, they listen to Collector's Quest. They're like, well, we got to simulate these guys' entire lives.
Yeah.
All right.
They just did all the backstory.
Fantastic. All right. I'm sorry. I don't know how to talk about curriculum 500 years in the future, Johnny, or even 100 years in the future. But all right, let's move on to the next part of the show, I think.
Okay, let's do it. Man, you normally never do that. That's awesome.
John, you did it. It's like 1:30. It's 1:30 right now.
I know.
I have work at 8. Not I have to wake up at 8. I'm at work at 8 now.
Oh, that is so gross. Why did they fuck your life like this?
I don't. Well, they just moved me again, so we'll see how it goes.
Did they?
Yeah, I'm on West Coast time. We don't have enough people on West Coast time, so I think I might be working until 8 p.m. now.
Okay, so did you get a full desk?
No, there's no desks anymore. I just saw there was a news article about how Google was downsizing and forcing people to share desks. So they have a half and half work week where you come in half the week and have a desk, and then another person comes in the other half of that week and has that same desk. And
they tried to do this at my work where everything became hotel desks, and there was a revolt.
So I'm not loud enough, but there are the people who just go into our chat and just complain loudly every day, and I just want to give them a hug because fuck. literally, you're paying me to do work for you. Give me a place to do the work. What is this ridiculous shit? You don't give me a desk anymore. What is this? What is 2023? This is absolute insanity. What's that? You're not going to give me a laptop? You're going to be like, I don't know, figure it out. You got a personal computer, right? Just like put all your work stuff on that. We'll save like $1,700, dude.
We'll have our IT sign in though. You can't have admin rights to your own computer.
Oh my God. Yeah, obviously, yeah. Johnny, what are you buying? What are you playing? Give me something cool that you bought.
Are we doing a question or we're scrapping questions this time? We're scrapping questions. It's too late. No questions.
We'll get a question. Let me get a question.
No, I mean, we did a whole... What was that thought? Like, we didn't do a thought... I mean, we did a thought episode. We didn't even give any real collectors info. Except that if you listen to this, I would collect all the games we highlighted if you were just like a rampant collector.
Tiger Wolf asks, I want more games like Atari 50. Blown away. Still waiting for Koei 50. Not gonna lie. In all seriousness, though, what other companies deserve the Atari 50 treatment?
I mean, Square.
But, like, isn't it supposed to be a historical run-through? Like, what's the first Square game is the Death Trap, I think? Like, does anyone care about that history?
Look, I think Sega needs it, but, like, I think all the companies that need a compilation disc already have it.
Well, I mean, Nintendo doesn't, because...
Nintendo does. They have a whole online service that's a compilation disc that you just go in and play.
The thing with Atari 50 is it's not a compilation. It also has this cool timeline with interviews and, like, explains history to you. It's a little bit more than a compilation. It's an elevated compilation.
It's an elevated compilation disc, but it's a compilation disc with YouTube videos attached.
Sure, but
go to YouTube.
Oh my God.
Find your favorite game, Google it, and be like, and then go play it on the Nintendo service.
All right. Well, until Nintendo does it, like, it's impossible to say any other company needs that.
No, I'm just saying, like, Sega already did it. They've had their thing out and they're, like, been doing it forever. Also, this isn't Atari's first compilation. Like, it just got better because, like, they basically gave you a digital book to go with it, which is just a video. So, like, all of us lazy people are like, oh, well, I don't want you to give me a book with my game. Can watch it through our eye holes on YouTube like videos.
Yeah, but it's not that the information is out there in a book or YouTube video. It's that it's organized, because that's really what makes it, like, exciting and easy to digest. Like, anyone could watch. There's so many books on the history of Atari, but the fact that you're in the game and you don't have to, like, go out to your phone and look something up about a game. I don't know. I think Atari 50 has value in that sense.
I'm not saying it doesn't have value, but I'm just saying, like, what if that's the only value is that they added a timeline, then
yeah, exactly. I think it would be cool for any company. I think there are companies that are, like, maligned, maybe like Electronic Arts. So they've got
here. I've got one. Hudson. Give me the Hudson.
Yes, because I've complained that I can't find the history of Hudson, like the early history. Yeah. Sure, but, like, I think any company people would appreciate it, because even, like, the evil companies, like, you think Electronic Arts, you go back to the 80s and 90s and, like, people didn't think that they were evil, and there's probably, like, some beloved games back then, like there's, like, your pinball construction sets and your Wastelands. I think any company people would appreciate it. I think EA could pull it off as, like, even a DLC thing. So you make the interesting timeline and then you lock half the games behind, like, $7.99 microtransactions.
And Capcom did that with the Capcom.
They did do that.
Yeah, but there was already a Capcom Archives 1 and 2 or Capcom Collection 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 2. It was very aggravating. And then, like, on the Wii U, and they're like, oh yeah, you want to... or on the Xbox, they're like, yeah, we got this Capcom's Greatest Hits or whatever it fucking was. God, I gotta pull the F word out of my vocab today. It's bothering me. Anyways, they did it, and they really stuck it to you on the microtransactions.
I can't, now that we're talking about it, can't believe EA hasn't done it.
Yeah.
Or Ubisoft or whatever.
Oh man, Ubisoft actually has like a bunch of weird stuff that's never like really seen the light of day for most people. That'd be one that might be interesting. So like, yes, any company with like a big history could, would, and should do it. I just, yes, it would be nice if we had like an organized history of games, but also I don't trust all these companies to do it because like sometimes you see their history pages and they just leave big chunks out, and I don't know. I just feel a little weird about it.
Yeah, I think Koei 50 might remove all of their adult entertainment games that they made for Japanese computers.
Which would be a mistake. Yeah.
It would be a mistake.
Yeah.
Johnny, what are you buying? How long have we done this episode for? This is such a long episode.
I don't know. I haven't looked at the clock. Tyler, I think I already talked about what I was buying. Unfortunately, I'm not buying a lot of games, but I did finally have a package come in today, or not today, over the week, and it contained so many games. It contained like 5 of them. I don't know if you're familiar with Strictly Limited games.
Sure am.
Oh, sure. Okay. So I bought like all the Panorama Cotton and Cotton games were being released on Switch, and I was like, oh man, I like Cotton, and I would like to be able to play them like more easily on a modern system. So I'm actually going to buy these, and I'm interested in them. Hey, Tyler. 16 months later.
Yeah.
These games show up. All games that were like slated to be out like 3 to 4 months max didn't come. You want to know what one of the holdups was, Tyler? One of the big holdups is other people already had their Death Smiles and all their Cotton games delivered to them, and then they finally got American releases, and like you could just buy them on Amazon. You want to know the big holdup, Tyler?
I sure do. I'll pretend I don't already know.
Yeah. It was the mug that came because they sold out of the basic edition pretty quick. So for the Saturn Panorama Boomerang Pack special edition, they put a mug in that one because that was like a thing that they did with the Cotton games. And the mug was the holdup. And I know what you're thinking. You've seen the mugs. You've seen the cute art on it. Like, clearly it was like a labor of love, and it's a little teacup, and it's got to be... probably was hard to construct maybe, and to get the print just... No, Tyler, it's like a generic mug. It doesn't even have an image on it. It just says, like, collector's edition, Cotton Boomerang, Sega Saturn on it. Like I got it from Vistaprint,
yeah,
Tyler.
That's what it sounds like.
The most generic, bullshittiest bullshit mug ever. It's goddamn terrible. And do you want to know what the biggest crime is?
What's the biggest crime?
Packed in. It wasn't packed in. You could have sent me my games. You could have sent them to me. Send me this bullshit mug later.
So all those collector's editions are going to be missing the mug, Johnny, so none of them are going to be complete in the future.
No, they're like, who cares? Put that mug in the... I almost, when I got it and I looked at it and realized it wasn't even packed in the box, I almost threw it across the room. I was just like, I hate you. So forever, I'm going to have this stupid piece in my collection that I'm going to hate, because when I had the drive and the want to play those games was a long time. I knew it was going to come, but when they told, like, I kept like emailing, I'm like, hey, like, I see these games are getting delivered. What's going on? Can I pay for shipping on the stuff that's like already ready? And I'm working with the same customer service rep. They're like, oh, well, we got a couple holdups on the collector's edition. She's like, well, really, it's this mug that we're really waiting on the print for the mug. And literally I could order the print on that generic lame mug from Amazon and have it tomorrow. So I don't understand why the print process took this long. Is Tyler, like, sure, you could give me 100 reasons about, well, the supply chain and everything that happened, and we already chose a provider and blah, blah, blah. But again, the mug was packed by itself. So send the rest, or give me the option to be like, I decline the mug. I don't care. Give me a refund of $2. I don't care. But what are we doing here? Anyways, that's what I got was a box of frustration, and a dumb mug. The Cotton games are cool. Death Smiles 1 and 2 pack, combo pack. That's like pretty cool. I'm excited to like give that a try. I like shmups, but I'm just terrible at them. So, I like them when they have a cute theme. And, yeah, that's, what came in. But the irony, Tyler, of those purchases, or that coming in and me being so frustrated over the mug, was what we talked about at the beginning of the show. All the cups that I bought. Did that even get recorded, or was that just us talking? I bought a bunch of new metal cups, tumblers, if you will.
Yeah, that's how we started this episode. It's been going on a real long time, I know.
Yes, thanks, Tyler. Like, way to drag people down. way to be a ray of sunshine. Anyways, I bought like 4 new ones. I got my little D&D ones. I got some Star Wars ones. I got the Great Pumpkin one, Charlie Brown. Pretty cool. Got some fun ones. I got some fun ones. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Johnny, you know who cares about drinkware that comes with games? So Nick J. Sheps over on the Instagram said that we always forget when we talk about the Resident Evil 4 GameStop edition, the water bottle it came with. And I don't remember this, which is why
I don't remember this water bottle ever.
It is hard to find pictures of it, or it's hard to find that this is even a thing on Google. So there is a Resident Evil Outbreak water bottle. It says antivirus on it, and it's a GameStop Capcom water bottle. I can't see a part that says that this is from Resident Evil 4. It looks like it might go with Resident Evil Outbreak, but apparently we always forget about talking about this water bottle. And doing a 2-second Google search right now, I can't see that this was part of the special edition. But
I'm not going to say that doesn't exist, but like maybe that wasn't with all of them. Maybe that was only pre-orders. I'm look, I'm not going to dispute it because I don't know enough about it. But if it does, then there's your information, people. We maybe forgot to talk about a water bottle. But yeah, this is literally the first time I'm hearing about it.
The one I'm seeing definitely seems like a Resident Evil Outbreak thing, not a Resident Evil 4 thing. So, I don't know. You know what, Nick J, give me more information, or someone send me more information.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm willing to be corrected.
What else you getting, Johnny? You got 5 games. I don't think you even told us the games besides Cotton, unless they were all super rare games.
They were all they were all Cotton games.
Okay.
Because I bought like 4 of them, and Death Smiles 1 and 2, and that was it. And then I did not buy. Oh, I bought Zatch Bell. For the PS2.
What? Mm-hmm. What are you talking?
The Mamoto battles.
What are you doing?
Because it had the card I needed to put in my GameCube game.
Okay. All right. Well, sure. That makes sense. Are you playing anything? You got anything else cool?
No. Literally, work was really rough, and there was a lot going on, and I did not. Like, I was so exhausted. My wife was out of town. She went and did a Pokemon thing in Vegas. So it was just me and my son. And so I didn't really have a whole lot of video game time.
All right. Johnny, I got the October 1970 issue of Scientific American, which is the first public publication of Conway's Game of Life.
Okay.
Are you
Pretty
familiar
cool
with it?
I am not. Tell me more.
It's I don't know exactly what the purpose of it is. It's a programming project, a math thought experiment. It lays out a bunch of squares on a grid, and the square can either be on or off. So then you step through time, and depending on how many squares are lit up around a specific square, that square either lives or dies. So if there's like 4 squares around a square, the square in the middle of that square turns on. If there's too many squares around a square, it dies. If there's not enough squares around a square, it dies. It's a big fancy grid that just makes cool patterns, basically. It's a kind of interesting part of computer science history, and I just wanted it. It's not really related to games, I don't think, any more than Stick and Rock are, but it's kind of cool.
I like it. Cool. Sounds cool.
I got Chex Quest, Johnny.
You did it.
Well, no. So I have a Chex Quest cereal box, and then I have Chex Quest in a jewel case. But for some reason, I was browsing Google, and I saw a complete Chex Quest, like the cereal box Chex Quest, and it still had the CD pasted inside the box.
Ooh.
And that CD was like a shrink-wrapped manual and a disc, I think. And the one I have is a jewel case. And looking at it, I'm like, That doesn't look like it came from the box. And now I don't know where the jewel case Chex Quest came from. But to make sure that my box is complete, I got one of these little sealed with the manual Chex Quests to put in my cereal box.
Okay.
To make sure it's the right one.
And maybe they both came. Maybe it came multiple ways.
It could have come both ways, but seeing the picture that it definitely came this one way, I just wanted to make sure I had that version. And then Johnny. Okay. We're talking about all these important games. Right? Mm-hmm. We got some bangers here. Let's look at some games I haven't played. I never played FIFA 1. Haven't played a lot of Twisted Metal 1. I was more of a Twisted Metal 2 guy.
And Twisted Metal is a game I did not enjoy.
I played a lot of these games, actually.
I thought Twisted Metal was just the worst.
I never played Mother.
Oh, that's a good one.
Never mind. I played a lot of these games, Johnny. Anyway, there's a lot of games that I still haven't played because you know what? Video game history is kind of endless considering how long video games are. But then we talked about Palm OS file servers in the last After Dark, and it got me thinking about Palm OS games.
Oh, no. Tyler, come on.
I'm playing
the most Tyler thing ever.
I'm playing the Quest from Redshift Software. It's like a Pocket PC RPG, but they ported it to Android and iOS, so you could play it on modern platforms. It's kind of like a more linear. It feels like Daggerfall is if I was gonna relate it to a relatable RPG, but it's Daggerfall for like a Pocket PC. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm playing that, so that's gonna be dozens of hours on a game that does not matter. Because I'm prioritizing fun and nostalgia because I don't have to be a video game historian all the time.
All right. Fair enough. But I wish you would play games that are fun.
Why can't this Pocket PC game be fun?
I mean, it could be.
It is.
Okay.
All right, that's it, Johnny. Let me go to bed.
Oh, you did it.
We're out.
You know what, Tyler? This episode has been going on a long time.
Uh-huh.
I just opened up the file and I'm like, oh my God, almost 3 hours. What the? Did we really talk that long? It didn't. You know what? Talking to you is a dream, Tyler. And our conversations always go too quick. That's why these episodes are always 3 hours.
I appreciate that sentiment, Johnny. But also sometimes when we're on a tangent and there's no good way to bring us back, I start sweating and I'm like, uh-oh. Johnny, you got to stop and bring us back. What's going on?
Well, I'm not always the introducer of the tangent. But I'll take the blame today. Anyways, that's it for our show. That's the whole show. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to know where you can find us, Tyler, where can we find you?
Video Game Sage, Instagram, and Discord. I'm Default Gen, Default Gen.
And I can be found on, well, I haven't really posted anything on Instagram, and I've been so busy. I haven't even been on our Discord much, but that's the best place you can find me. Either one of those if you need to send me a message. Preferably Discord, and you can get to our Discord if you are one of our Patreons, which is you can join us at Collector's Quest or patreon.com/Collector's Quest, and you can join for as little as $2, or you can join at the $4 level to get the extra content. So that's it. $2 gets you in the Discord, $4 gets you extra content, and you could send us messages and hang out with some of the best people who are collecting right now. And that's it for the show. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.